Good morning. Welcome in to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me this morning.
Sir, yes, sir.
Andrew, what's going on, man?
How you doing?
Oh, just rolling in here late.
I got a question for you, man.
My fast food people took a long time again. What's the
Not
question?
about that.
What's your question?
What's up with your boy Draymond?
Yeah, I'm out on Draymond. I'm gonna be honest with you. He needs to stop punching people. I'll be clear. I've been out on Draymond for a while. I've been constantly looking for a play, probably since he kind of sack tapped LeBron and cost him the 73 win title. Yeah, I've kind of been out on Draymond for a while there. Now I understand he's been important to what they do. Find somebody who's like 90% as good at that and punches people like 90% less.
How about 100% less?
I would take 90% less at this point because he punches people so often.
And for what reason? Right?
I don't know.
There was nothing about the way him and Nurkic were, let's just call it tussling back and forth.
Yes.
To warrant a swing around punch town.
Now, the only one that I can justify is I do think Jordan Poole probably had it coming. I am not a Jordan Poole guy. So when he punched,
just because you don't like Jordan Poole doesn't mean he has it coming.
He might have. I don't know. He seems like a tough hang.
Just because you want to punch Jordan Poole,
I do,
doesn't mean that punch was warranted too.
I did want to punch Jordan Poole a lot. He thought that he was better than Steph, and I couldn't have that.
But this Draymond thing, man, I mean, it can't be.
He needs to stop punching people.
It can't be a 3 to 5 game suspension.
No,
it can't be a 10-game suspension.
What's frustrating?
This has to be much, much longer to really send a message.
What's frustrating now is like even trading him becomes challenging at this point because
nobody wants that in their locker room.
Yeah, he's just messed up so much. The only thing I can think of is if you have like a young team that you kind of need like an SOB on that team to kind of toughen them up a little bit.
Maybe.
That's the only thing I can think of because he does work incredibly hard. Like he can help you with your defense. If you can convince him to stop punching people for like 3 months, that would be ideal. I don't know if that's on the table at this point.
Dude, you watch this clip back, and we're watching it constantly on ESPN right now, and there is space between both bodies. And he's acting like
I don't know what he's
doing,
his
jersey and body are getting pulled to the hardwood. You say, maybe you find an SOB and it can help a young team. Yeah, that is true. But like, find somebody more Pat Bev-like than Draymond Green.
Oh, I hate Pat Bev too.
Yeah, but see, Pat Bev isn't throwing punches. Pat Bev may be stirring the pot a lot, but he's not throwing any punches.
So here's my issue with Pat Bev. It's a different conversation than Draymond Green because he does some of this stuff too. And to be like, I'm not even exaggerating. You could ask. I mean, you'd only be able to ask my buddy Jake because we're both Warriors fans, and I talk to him about this all the time. But I have never been a huge Draymond guy. I've always been a Steph Clay guy, and Draymond's kind of a necessary evil. I am not defending Draymond by any stretch of the imagination. I do think he's one of the better defenders of the generation, but for what he is taking off the table now, what he currently brings to it is no longer worth it. But my issue with Pat Bev is not that he does the Draymond stuff. It's that he does cheap stuff during the actual game. Like Draymond does some of that too. Don't get me wrong. But where Draymond gets frustrating is the after the whistle stuff where he can't control himself. The Pat Bev stuff, I just don't like the way he plays basketball. It's like we talked about before where it's kind of this like old school Cincinnati Bearcats basketball that drives me crazy. And don't get me wrong, he can be valuable to a team because he's good at that.
Yeah, because he's the Nat.
But I just hate him for the just that.
And that's fine. But see, that's his job, right? To get people to hate you.
But there's only one Pat Bev, right? So maybe another team looks and says, "Hey, maybe Draymond can provide enough of that." I don't know who it would be.
He's a liability at this point.
Listen,
I mean, this is his third time being ejected this season.
I don't disagree. That's my only that's my only explanation on what could happen with him next. Otherwise, they just get stuck with him. I don't really know what you do with that because he is a liability at this point. I think he's been a liability for a while. maybe you convince a team that's trying to dump some salary to try and to hold on to him, and then they can just waive him. Because a lot of times, because what would probably happen is Draymond wouldn't be the centerpiece of the trade, right? You would probably do like a Draymond and one of the younger guys, either like if you like a Jonathan Kuminga or if you like a Moses Moody, those are kind of the sweeteners to be like, hey, take on Draymond's contract, you guys waive him, and then we'll get something useful in return. That's the only way it would work, is if the Warriors overpay to get rid of Draymond, basically, and the other team's motivated. Like the Raptors are an interesting match, right? Because Pascal Siakam makes way too much money. He makes almost $40 million a year. He does not bring you $40 million a year in quality. He doesn't really match up with some of the age ranges of the rest of their team in terms of, like, Scotty Barnes is 22. You've got like Precious Achiuwa is 24. You've got Jalen McDaniels is 25. He's several years ahead of these guys in his development. OG Anunoby is 26. He probably doesn't help you that much at $40 million a year if you're the Raptors right now. Whereas maybe you take a flyer on a guy like Kuminga, maybe you take a flyer on a guy like Moody, and you have to eat Draymond's contract and waive him to do it. Maybe he never even sets foot in the building, to be fair.
The only place that this guy's going to step foot again playing competitive basketball, if this keeps up, is the blacktop.
Yeah, I mean,
he's going to go out, get some buddies, and then you can act like this when you're out playing street ball.
I mean, not really. Because you act like this on the street, you get an assault charge, basically. So, I mean,
but you can play like this without the worry of being ejected. Now, you'll eject yourself, or people may eject you, like in terms of, well, you're going to throw punches, I'm going to throw punches back, because everything goes when you're on the blacktop. If you're going to start something like that.
TK says, send Draymond to Detroit so he can lose in perpetuity. That seems fair. Seems like a fair punishment. He also says, Poole is basically just a big child, so it makes sense that I don't like him, which I agree with there as well.
Don't feed into Ravi's rant.
TK
don't feed into
TK's
those.
right. We love TK. We've got plenty of non-Draymond things on the show today. They just won't stop showing him punching people, so it was hard to ignore.
Well, it's what I woke up to this morning.
Yeah.
I opened Twitter, and boom, he's throwing a punch on Nurkic. I'm like, I have to ask Ravi about this. And then I saw Jokic get tossed in Chicago.
Yeah.
Over what?
I guess arguing. I don't know.
Talking to the official when he's running down the court?
Yeah.
Ravi, you know how much I've put up with in grade school basketball with kids yelling at me running down the court? And my first thought isn't to eject somebody, especially eject the best player in basketball.
I would eject those kids all the time. I mean, hey, you get out of here.
What is happening?
I don't like your attitude. I don't like the way you're looking at me. Get out of here. Coming up on the show today, we'll talk to Anna Bellinghausen from Hurrdat Sports. She's down in Tampa. She is ready to watch the women's volleyball Final Four starting tomorrow night. Nebraska will play. Then at 8 o'clock, we've got Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7. Again, just curious what's going on there, and lots of recruiting news.
Well, BC
recently
has a crystal ball in on Kyle McCord right now.
Love to see it. 8:30, we'll talk to Kevin Sjuts. He's the sports director for 1011 News in Lincoln. And at 9 p.m., not 9 p.m., 9 a.m. at the end of the show, not the end of the day, we will talk to Matt DeMarinis from the White and Blue Review.
I don't think Matt would want to come on at 9 p.m.
He'd probably prefer it, honestly, to the morning spots, but he'll make do.
So he's a little Jacob Padilla-like?
Oh, yeah. All of those sports writers are like, because they watch their games, they stay up after, they write their stories, they go
up
to bed.
till 2. Yeah, you're right.
Minimum 2. And then they fall asleep when the sun's rising, and then they sleep until the next game starts. So we appreciate our nocturnal friends here joining us in the morning. But that's what we have on tap for you here today. You can join us, be part of the show. As we mentioned, the YouTube stream, you can get in the comments there or give us a call on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline, 888-638-4876. That is how you can be a part of the show. You mentioned some crystal ball action with Brian Christopherson and Kyle McCord. So let's just do a quick update here because not everyone spends their life on Twitter the way we do, searching for information and searching for Draymond Green punches, apparently.
No, those find me.
Yeah, those find those, and they find people that are unwitting victims of Draymond's anger, apparently, except for Jordan Poole, who's not a victim. He earned it. So what's
Ravi was there.
Listen, I saw the video. I mean,
you know what? Let's just call up Connor Stallions. He was probably there.
I had the little glasses on with the with the camera in it. So at the moment, as you said, Brian Christopherson has a crystal ball for Kyle McCord,
along with Shafe and Brunsey.
From what I have heard, what I've been told, and all signs still point to Kyle McCord coming to Nebraska, which I think is a great, great thing. Even with Dylan Raiola coming, which, again, everything I'm hearing, all signs point to Dylan Raiola will be at Nebraska. Obviously, his visit starts on Saturday. What's the 17th? 15th. He starts 15th. Friday. It's Friday. It ends the 17th.
Carry the 2.
I don't know, man. Dates are hard. I can't believe we're in the middle of December already. We're like 12 days from Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
I still have some shopping to do. I
have to wrap. Like I have all of my stuff
so
on my kitchen table, but I won't wrap until the 22nd.
I am so bad at wrapping presents. I have implored my wife. I was like, get me gift bags, please. And she came.
But that's not fun to tear open.
I don't care. And she came home the other day with wrapping paper. I was like, did you get the gift bags? And she just looks at me. I look at her. She looks at me and I go, are you going to make me wrap presents this year? She's like, they didn't have the gift bags. I like, because she's very like theme oriented for Christmas, right? So I can't just get any gift bags because they have to match.
They can't have the plain blue one.
No, because they have to match the tree and they have to match the other presents that are wrapped and the general theme. We're going with a Candyland Christmas this year. So it's a lot of like white and Candyland color. I don't know. It's like
there's white and Candyland colors.
Yeah, it's like pastels and stuff. I don't know. It's like some light.
How about let's just open up the game board?
Yeah, basically. And so I have to now wrap presents because I didn't get any gift bags this year, and I'm not looking forward to it.
I'm not a good wrapper either, though. Like I know how to do it, but every gift that I wrap looks like a 6, and every gift that my mom and sisters wrap always look like a 9 or a 10. Always.
I thought you meant that however you do it, the package always looks like the number 6.
No.
And I'm like, wait, how does that even?
No.
We're on
a scale from 1
and I was like, a 6 and a 9.
Yeah, I make my own gift bags.
A 6
with
and
wrapping
a 9
paper.
would look the exact same, sir.
No. I mean, the look of how
on a scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah, because I use too much wrapping paper, and then I get called out for it. It's like, oh, Andrew, wasting wrapping paper.
Sloppy looking.
I'm like,
you know what's funny?
Can you see the gift? Can you see what I got you?
That's the goal.
That is all that needs to be done here. The goal is to not let you know what you are unwrapping.
So what's funny about me being a terrible gift wrapper is I used to have to do that as part of my job. When I was in college, I worked at a Dillard's in the customer service department, and people would like bring their stuff that they had bought for you to gift wrap like very fancily. And I wasn't great at it then. I was better at it than I am now. But as soon as I stopped that job, something in my brain like broke, and I've reverted back to like a childlike state of wrapping presents. And I don't know.
You're wrapping a box. It looks like a soccer ball.
Yeah, I'm just like, I don't know what's happening here. So yeah, it's really, really bad, and it's going to look terrible because we didn't get gift bags this year. So if you know where I can find some Candyland colored gift bags,
I don't
know.
Thank you, Shane. Let me know because the gift wrapping is going to be a struggle this year. But anyway, to
get off our tangents,
to get out of the crowd of the rabbit hole we just went down.
Kyle McCord, we can wrap him up for Christmas.
Yeah, well, that he'd be difficult to wrap because like people move.
I don't know. He'd probably be a 6.
So everything we're hearing, and we'll talk to Brian Christopherson about that. Everything we're hearing is Kyle McCord still planning to commit to Nebraska. Everything we're hearing is Dylan Raiola still planning to commit to Nebraska. Now, there's 2 coaching rumors that are connected to the Nebraska quarterback position, directly and indirectly, that One I've been hearing about for a few days.
Mm-hmm.
The other one I just started hearing about last night. You know, we talked about being on Twitter too much. So apparently Georgia fans are very concerned about Kirby Smart going to the Panthers. This is a thing that started rolling last night.
This is message board talk.
Yes, that has made its way to Twitter. So the biggest cesspool that you can think of, the message boards onto Twitter. This is what we're dealing with.
It's all right. Other
here.
message boards are saying Saban's retiring again for about the 7th straight
they say
year.
that every year. But apparently Georgia fans are very concerned about Kirby Smart Kirby Smart leaving for the NFL. The only reason I bring it up is if, for whatever reason, the Rayolas got wind of this. That would make a lot of sense as to what happened here.
Mm-hmm.
Because this seemed to all happen very last minute from what we've been able to piece together. I do think there probably was, you know, we heard Matt Rule on Pat McAfee yesterday, right? Mm-hmm. Where he's talking about, guys get promised things. They don't always follow through. I do think that's a factor here as well.
I do too.
But
I want to congratulate all the teams playing for championships. Wish I could be a part of it.
If Georgia was the right fit, I don't know that the Rayolas, who are in a better position as far as I understand financially than a lot of guys coming into college, I'm not sure they would have let the money be the factor if Georgia was the right fit. If Kirby Smart's leaving Georgia, or they're worried about Kirby Smart leaving Georgia, whether he leaves this year, because, you know, there was this time when Saban was at LSU and it became pretty apparent that he wanted to try the NFL at some point. It wasn't clear if it was going to be the Miami job. It wasn't clear if it was going to be some other job down the road, but it was pretty clear that he was going to leave at some point. So even if it's not just this job, but if they got wind of like, Kirby Smart's sniffing the NFL pretty aggressively, maybe that's enough to be like, okay, we had this promise broken, and now this guy that we are theoretically coming to play for is not really sold on being here. Well, Matt Rule already tried the NFL thing, and he seems pretty dead set on staying at Nebraska. Nebraska's going to keep their promises.
He's dead set in staying in college, that's for sure.
For sure, yeah. And we know Nebraska's going to keep their promises to us because so far they always have. They said they were going to treat us and Donnie separately, and guess what? They've treated Donnie well and been respectful and rewarded him for doing a good job. You know, they've said X, Y, and Z. They said they actually do want Dayton. It's not just because they're trying to get to Dylan. Dayton's his little brother in the class of 2026. If you guys aren't as big of nerds as we are, you know, like, and Nebraska's done the right things and kept the promises. And so maybe they look at that situation and be like, well, so I bring that up because it makes me wonder if that was a facilitating factor.
And it could be a piece. I think the big one, though, is not keeping your word and that affecting whoever. You had mentioned the quote that he said on the McAfee show, and that is actually the biggest takeaway I had from that interview. And it was like a 45-minute interview. It wasn't short.
No.
And it's hard to get that type of airtime with McAfee. And the fact that Rule stayed on that long is pretty incredible in itself. But Rule said something along the lines of, you know, you can be promised things at another school. You can be promised $1 million, but when you get to that school, it may not be there when you arrive. And you know, if you're transferring, now you're stuck. But if you're coming out of high school, like, okay, well, what does that tell you about your next 4 years at the school? Can you trust whatever anybody tells you? And that's a big thing, is just trust in everybody's life. Trust is a huge, huge piece of everything. And if Rayola felt like he was, you know, duped, if he felt that they weren't being loyal to him in any sort of way, that would be enough for me to say, this isn't for me. And yes, you know, if these rumors do come out to be true, or if they heat up, and, you know, sometimes, more times than not, where there's smoke, there's fire. But, you know, there are times where smoke is just smoke and then it fizzles off. If I'm Rayola, those two pieces in itself, yes, would get me to move on. But that one piece is enough for me too. That one thing. And you mentioned it's not about money. Look, the Raiola family has money. His dad played in the NFL, and he was really good in the NFL, and he played for years. Like, money isn't like the thing for that family. It's about what's going to set Dylan up best for his future. And if they're not going to get someone that is in their corner and that says they're in their corner or his corner, they take money off the table, they take other things off the table, they push him down the depth chart, whatever. Like that's enough to get someone to say, this isn't for me. This isn't the right fit for me. Yeah. That right there solely is enough to push somebody away.
Yeah, right there. It certainly is enough. I don't disagree there. But just because it's enough doesn't mean it's the only thing, right? Being enough doesn't mean it's the only factor. What feels, for as abruptly as this thing happened, it feels like there probably had, in my opinion, had to be a almost overwhelming kind of confluence of events. Now, that goes to whether it's the NIL, whether it has anything to do with Kirby Smart, which I think we can safely say it has something to do with broken promises with NIL. Whether the Kirby Smart thing has anything to do with it or this other piece, those are all negatives on the Georgia side. I think there also may be positives on the Nebraska side, which we touched on a little bit yesterday with Donnie. But I think there's some real momentum to this Glenn Thomas thing being real. With a former assistant under Matt Rule. He's coached quarterbacks for a long time. He has been an offensive coordinator or co-offensive coordinator with Rule for a long time. He is currently with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And obviously the Steelers had their offensive coordinator fired earlier this year. That means Glenn Thomas probably looking for a job by the end of this NFL season. A lot of things are pointing in the direction of just Glenn Thomas joining Nebraska staff in some capacity, including his quarterbacks coach. If that's somebody that Dylan Raiola likes, that to me, between negative stuff at Georgia, positive stuff at Nebraska, that could be enough to kind of push you over the edge there and say, hey, it's time to move on. Let's go be a Nebraska Cornhusker.
I don't think people should forget the name Jake Peetz either.
Jake Peetz also had been rumored last year, maybe available finally after his stint with the Rams. Coming up next, we've got some other quarterback movement to talk about in college football here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. I'm Ravi, Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. Hey, we are talking Nebraska football, of course. We're talking
Nebraska football in December.
We're talking Cruton. We're talking transfer portals. We're talking a little Matt Rule on Pat McAfee.
Which he hasn't changed a bit since he's gotten here. Like, that is like a huge takeaway that everybody should have on the mind right now, not just fans, but like think about what that says to a recruit. And that's why Nebraska can get some of these recruiting wins. It's because Matt Rule he's one lane. So he doesn't ever veer off his lane. He's always with the one message, and he never, ever says one thing in one spot and says something else in a different spot.
Here's what I really like about Matt Rule is his character and who he is at his core does not change, like you're talking about. But he is willing to learn and take in new information, right?
Oh, sure.
He's not set in his ways in a sense. Because, like, I think deep down, he's like an old school guy, like an old school type football coach. Like, he probably coming into it wasn't the biggest fan of NIL and isn't the big. I mean, you've heard him talk. He's not the biggest fan of the transfer portal in terms of how to build a program and turning guys over and treating guys as disposable.
But he knows he has to do it at different points.
But he understands that's part of the job.
Yeah, when there's a difference maker out there, you get him.
You go get him, right? One of the guys they think can be a difference maker this upcoming year is Kyle McCord. And I know that some people, and you brought up a really good point during the break, I know that some people are a little bit maybe hesitant to want to bring in both McCord and Raiola. They think maybe it might turn Raiola off in terms of being here. And I don't think that's the case. And there's pretty good historical evidence for starting a veteran guy 1 year and then bringing in the highly touted guy after that.
Right. There's so many NFL draftees just as in recent seasons,
yeah, recently.
like as recent as a year ago or year removed from college to the NFL, that you can make an example out of this. You look at Bryce Young. He was behind Mac Jones in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
He threw a few passes, but he was still behind Mac Jones the majority of the year. Staying in Alabama, Tua came in to replace Jalen Hurts in a championship game.
Very end of the year.
Right.
Yeah.
So he didn't play most of the year.
All regular season.
Justin Fields was in front of C.J. Stroud.
Mm-hmm.
Cade McNamara was in front of J.J. McCarthy. Sam Howell was in front of Drake May. Spencer Rattler, at least for 6 games, was in front of Caleb Williams.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about some of the best young quarterbacks in the league right now. And we're talking about the number 1 pick in next year's draft in Caleb Williams.
Yeah,
like,
either Williams or Drake May, whichever way.
Yeah, or Drake May.
We're talking about the top
1 and 2. Right. We're talking about 1 and 2
in some order.
Dylan Raiola knows that his path can be similar to one of these guys, and that it's not uncommon to take a path like that.
And frankly, you're probably better off if you do take a path like that. One of the things that I was talking to, because people know that you do this for a living, so they always want to talk about football
Mm-hmm.
or whatever with
Mm-hmm.
you, right? So I was at this Christmas party this weekend, and somebody was asking me about NFL quarterbacks, and why they're a Vikings fan, and they're like, how come none of these guys that we ever take a chance on are any good? And I was like, well, first of all, you always draft like 4th and 5th rounders, so it's kind of a crapshoot at that point. But the thing that I wanted that I firmly believe is that quarterback play is way more conditional on their surroundings than people ever want to give credit to. And it's more so in the NFL because it's that higher of a level, but I think it's true in college as well, where you can be a really talented guy. You can be a really talented quarterback, and if you're not in the right spot with the right pieces around you and the right coaching, then you may not be successful, right? You may, and there's a handful of guys that can transcend situation, but it's a way smaller number than we think it is. Like, the guy that I always bring up is Tom Brady. If Tom Brady isn't in New England, where Bill Belichick believes in him, gets to sit behind Drew Bledsoe, and then gets the opportunity to grow with a really great defense and a really great coaching staff, are we sure he's in the league 4 years after he gets drafted in the 6th round? Because I'm not. Now, by his year 5, 6, 7, he was a transcendent guy that could transcend his situations, right? That's why they stopped. Kind of what we're seeing with Patrick Mahomes. They stopped signing receivers for a while. They kind of got a little lackadaisical because he became that guy, right? But the number of guys coming out that are in that neighborhood is so small.
Right. You see what Bryce Young is doing right now in Carolina, and he's struggling a ton
now,
because they don't have
ironically,
the proper things around him.
C.J. Stroud might be one of those guys because that organization's a dumpster fire. It has been for years. I like DeMeco Ryans a lot, but from above him,
they don't have any like crazy names. Like Nico Collins is their top wideout.
Not just that, but like organizationally from the owner and the GM, like Houston's a mess. And they did
people behind sitting in an office chair.
Yes,
not the guys catching
desk,
footballs.
Yeah, the desk jockeys in Houston are a mess, right? So, but hiring DeMeco Ryans was a really good setup. And then C.J. Stroud, I think we're watching him become one of those guys, or prove to us that he's one of those guys that can transcend situation. I'm not saying Dylan Raiola isn't that guy, but I'm saying if you can get someone so he doesn't have to be, if you can get Kyle McCord to give Malachi Coleman and Jaden Doss and Jalen Lloyd another year of seasoning, and Thomas Fidone another year of seasoning, and you can get guys like Sam Sledge and Gunnar Gatola and Brock Knudsen and Mason Goldman and Grant Bricks, and you can get all these guys an extra year. So all of a sudden, Dylan Raiola walks in with a seasoned veteran wide receiver group and a experienced in the system for a couple years, been through the strength and conditioning program, offensive line, who's been coached up by his uncle, by the way, who apparently is awesome at his job. Like, if you give him that situation, why wouldn't you?
Right. And Dylan Raiola too, like there are exceptions in the college football game where a really, really great high school quarterback
Yes.
can come in and start day one.
And there's more in college than there is in the NFL.
And you saw like Dante Moore this past year do that. But what did Dante Moore's numbers show you?
I think Dante Moore still only played 4 games.
Right. And in those 4 games, I think he had like 9 picks, maybe 11 picks, something like that.
It was 11 and 9. I don't remember which one was
touchdowns and which ones was picks.
Basically 50-50.
Right. Yeah, it was pretty close. And that just shows that he had,
he's a 5-star. He was the number 2 player. He was a very similar prospect.
His youth showed
to Dylan Raiola.
But then you go back a little bit. You can look at Bo Nix, who went to Auburn, started right away, had some really good games, but also kind of fizzled off and didn't really come to be who he is until he went to Oregon. Then you look at Jaden Daniels. Mm-hmm. He started at Arizona State. He didn't become the Heisman at Arizona State. Mm-hmm. He became the Heisman at LSU. Yeah. And sometimes it takes now that next stop to really, truly flourish.
And I don't know if it's so much about moving so much as it is about
getting that experience. I think the experience thing is the big key.
Getting the seasoning. And there's not a ton of guys. I mean, I think Trevor Lawrence is the one off the top of my head that came in as a true freshman, was ready to go, and was pretty much the guy from the jump. He's the one that I think of that I'm like, I think he was that type of dude. Outside of that, most of these guys that we're talking about, the guys that are high draft picks, the guys that are in the NFL now, the guys that are currently about to be picked in the NFL, most of those guys didn't take that path. Most of those guys took a sit for at least part of their freshman year and then take over the starting job. That, to me, is why Kyle McCord's so important, right? Because there is not a soul on the roster right now that should start ahead of Dylan Raiola. Let's be totally clear about that. Not a soul, okay? Kyle McCord probably should start over Dylan Raiola. Now, if you get into camp and Dylan's just better, by all means, start him, right?
But I have a hard time believing that Dylan can't improve the little parts of his game that Kyle has already improved
for a couple of years,
4 years time.
Sat for a couple of years and now has a full year
of college playing experience.
And not just any super high level. This isn't like you're getting a guy from the FCS or from the Group of 5. You're getting a guy from a top 6, I think is where they ended up, Ohio State team. He's been in it this year. He drove he did a game-winning drive at Notre Dame with everything going crazy to win that game in a hostile environment and one of the biggest stages you'll ever be in his first handful of games starting as a quarterback, by the way. Like, that dude's got some of the mileage on him in a good way to be like, okay, we can feel good about him overcoming some of these things. We can feel good about him not being in a spot that he's going to be too big for him right away because he's already been in those spots.
Right. And the last thing I'll bring up here too is this. Dylan Raiola can step in and just take that backseat spot to Kyle McCord and improve his game so much that by the time he steps foot on the football field, whether it's for 4 games next season or not, right? He can get the experience he needs to really put him over the top going into his next 5 years of football, right? Because you can take those 4 games in redshirt and then get that experience under Kyle McCord all season long, and that's the path that really he should be taking.
Yeah, I agree. Coming up next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, we'll have Anna Bellinghausen live from Tampa, Florida, to talk about the NCAA Volleyball Final Four on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. I'm Ravi, Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me as well.
Apologize for going over there a little bit. We had a technical difficulty on our end.
Yeah, I had a little computer glitch, but we're back. We should be good to go now. Joining us now is Anna Bellinghausen on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline. Anna, how are you this morning?
What's up? I'm great. How are you guys?
Good. Is it 8:44 there or 6:44? I can't ever remember the time in Florida.
So Eastern time, that's an hour later than you guys, Andrew. Yes, 8:44.
All you had to say was it's 8:44. I didn't need a lesson. Like, I'm not. That's like, so this is the problem with society, Anna. If I raise my hand in class and the teacher's like, "There's no dumb questions," and then you're the one that's like, "No, there's some pretty dumb questions out there," and let me inform you.
let me say, maybe there's no dumb questions in elementary school. There are dumb questions at Sports Talk Radio.
Ravi. All right, Anna, thanks for joining us. We appreciate your time this morning.
Anna, so you're down in Tampa for the volleyball Final Four. What are the vibes like so far down in the great state of Florida?
I would say vibes are high right now. I'm really excited to get over to the arena and check out the open practices. And not only are they open to media, but also open to fans. I am so curious to see how much Big Red will be in attendance. Of course, there's also Wisconsin. I know they travel well too. So once I get over to the arena in about an hour here, I'll give you guys a better vision of how many Nebraska fans are there. But I'm expecting a pretty big turnout. You saw the walk-in yesterday off the plane, and there's basically a red carpet rollout with just fans and girls holding signs, everything like that. So I'm expecting a large turnout. This is the bowl game for Husker fans.
That comes at no surprise, right?
Absolutely no. I mean, Husker fans are the ones that are going to show out the most. And you talk to any sports media across the country, I think they'll say that Nebraska fans are pretty unrivaled in their passion for volleyball. I mean, Wisconsin's obviously up there too. I'm sure Pitt and Texas will have a great show out too. But how fun is it also that the potential matchup if Nebraska wins is either Wisconsin or Texas, basically the lesser of two evils for Husker fans.
Wait, which one is the lesser of the evils? In that one, I'm not sure. I think it's just two evils.
It's funny. Emily Eman put out a tweet and was like, Husker fans, I'm actually curious, who would you root for? Is it Wisconsin or is it Texas? And the poll had 10,000 votes, and Texas actually won. So
yeah, I think I would vote for Texas too, though, based on what we've seen out of Wisconsin this season.
Yeah, maybe a better matchup for Nebraska.
Okay, now when you look at Nebraska, let's go to the on-court stuff now. Who have you really seen step up and make a difference this NCAA tournament, whether it's on the court with her play or off the court with her leadership?
Geez, I mean, they all stand out for sure, but I mean, I would look to Becca Alec. I think her blocking and her defense really fires this Nebraska team up. And then you also have to bring up the name Bergen Riley. I think she's the best setter in the entire country. And if she were to lead this team to the national championship, she'd just be the fourth setter in its history to ever do that as a freshman. So really impressive, just the poise that this Nebraska team has. I mean, you start four freshmen out on the court, you probably aren't thinking that you find yourself in a Final Four this soon. But, I mean, that just speaks to the talent and the recruiting class that they had coming in. And I say Becca Alec also because I think she wears a chip on her shoulder from last year, and especially being one of the few girls on that team that experienced the Sweet 16 loss. So, and if anyone's ever watched Becca Alec on the court, she's the most animated person ever, and I think is kind of the heart and the soul of this team.
We're talking with Anna Bellinghausen. She is part of the Hurrdat Sports team, and she's down in Tampa, Florida for the volleyball Final Four. Anna, are you going to have an opportunity to watch the other teams' open practices as well, or just Nebraska's?
Yes, so I'll be at all four practices and also all four media availabilities. So we get to go in the locker room and talk to every team. So I'll definitely ask Pitt about what they think about this Nebraska matchup, and I'll do the same with Wisconsin and Texas. So, yeah, we get to see all four teams, and it'll be a great chance to kind of see where their heads are at and the kind of vibe they're giving off, too. I think that's important. So
are you going to take some notes, scout Pitt a little bit, and give those over to Coach Cook, or what's the plan here?
Hey, you have to be unbiased in this journalism. So no note sharing, but I think I'm sure each team watches each other's press conferences, though.
Well, technically, if you gave the notes to Wisconsin and Texas, too, then you would be unbiased.
You could do the thing where you just drop the note plan and just have it be completely wrong, like the wrong scouting report for Nebraska.
What are we, Connor Stallions? Like, what's happening?
No, that's the Mike Leach. Did you ever hear?
Yeah,
that's my fate. Oh, man, Mike Leach, what a treasure.
R.I.P.
Anna, so outside of volleyball and going to 4 practices and 4 media days, you have any other plans for your big trip to Tampa?
So I'm not a fan of roller coasters, so I will not be attending Busch Gardens.
Fair.
Not about that, but I'm sure it's a fun time.
It is.
geez, beyond that, hopefully going to find some good dinner spots in Tampa. So if any listeners knows where to go, let us know, please, because we've got a team of 4 of us down here in downtown Tampa. So we're looking for some good food spots. Ravi, I know you'll appreciate that.
See, I could give you food spots in Clearwater, which is like a hop, skip, and a jump away from Tampa, but I don't know if you want to drive 30 minutes.
Only if it's really worth it.
Man, all right, I'll send one, and then you guys can look it up and let me know, because there's a place that has all-you-can-eat crab legs, and I'm a huge crab leg guy.
Ooh, okay. And I would be careful if you're on the wrong side of the bay. It is a lot of elderly people, so you may have to eat dinner at like 4. Just keep it. Just as you know, I'm just trying to warn you out there. I know the Tampa Rays have had some issues with that, so just make sure you check the hours on the restaurants before you get out there.
I will.
Anna, so tell us, I'm going to step away from volleyball here quickly because you were geeking out a little bit yesterday. Kyle McCord was on your flight to Charlotte, huh?
Yes, he actually was. Him and his mom and dad were on our flight, and I'm honestly kind of shocked I recognized him right away because he wasn't wearing, obviously, any team gear, not anything Nebraska, not anything Ohio State. So I looked at him. I felt like I saw a ghost. I was like, whoa. That's actually Kyle McCord, and I looked up pictures to confirm that was him and his family, and it was. And I just had to tweet that out after Greg did because I just think it's hilarious because you can't go anywhere, honestly, in Nebraska without being noticed or recognized if you have some sort of tie to Husker athletics. If you will be noticed, and it's hilarious that 2 media members saw him going and coming on his flight to Omaha. So yeah, I didn't ask him any questions, wanted to leave the guy alone, but it was pretty funny seeing him there.
You know what's funny about that? Like Anna says, you can't go anywhere in Nebraska without somebody noticing who you are. But like, do you remember when Nick Chubb got drafted and they were on Hard Knocks and he's standing in the airport waiting for his luggage and the guys next to him are like, so are you a player? What's your name? Where'd you go to college? Like, I'm like, wait a second, this dude was taken in the 2nd round, and you're asking him all these questions. But if that's Kyle McCord in Cincinnati or in Nebraska, it's like, oh my gosh, let me get a photo with you right now.
Literally.
So, and I am a little disappointed. So you didn't get us an inside scoop, even like off the record, just be like, hey, yeah, you coming to Nebraska, bud?
No, he had his noise canceling headphones on, so I took that as a sign. So no one could talk to him, but no, I mean, his family did have Chick-fil-A, if that's any insight. So they know their fast food, and that one's the best fast food in my opinion. So I trust them.
Now, Anna,
so
go ahead.
So you going like gym rules here? If somebody's got the like full headphones on, you don't talk to them. Is airport rules and gym rules with headphones the same?
I think it would be really embarrassing if I went up to him and tried to talk to him and he just straight up didn't hear me. So I just avoided that.
I feel like you just don't talk to people like in an airport or on an airplane. Like, I think that's the universal rule.
I don't really talk to strangers, but
it's like being in a library.
If I was trying to get a scoop on, a quarterback recruit, I might just be like, I wouldn't even tell him who I was. Like, I wouldn't tell him that I was with media. I would just tap on his shoulder and be like, you coming to Nebraska, bud?
And I was gonna say though, because Ravi got Chick-fil-A this morning, and his experience wasn't as good as Kyle McCord's apparently.
It's just a little slow. The food's good. It's a little slow.
But is Chick-fil-A premier if their service isn't speedy?
I think it's worth the wait. I waited actually 30 minutes in line at the Charlotte airport.
Oh no!
I have no boundaries.
Wow.
That's
excessive.
That's a hot take, Anna. I mean, listen.
Well, we had a layover, so I'm like, well, what am I doing?
Anna, just because you had a layover doesn't mean you wait 30 minutes for fast food.
I appreciate the quality of Chick-fil-A, but a big part of the equation there is the service. If I'm gonna wait 30 minutes plus for fast food chicken, I'm going to Popeyes.
Jeez, I'm not waiting for 30 minutes for anything.
That wasn't an option. Guys.
All right.
Before it made me want Chick-fil-A, so.
All right, Anna, one last thing before we let you go. Are you expecting these semifinal matches, both of them, to go the distance, all 5 sets?
Ooh. Okay, so the Nebraska-Pitt one I think will be super defensive, and that one might take a while. So I'm going to say 5 sets for probably both. I can't imagine Wisconsin or Texas let each other go less than 4 or 5 sets either. So I'm going to say yes to both 5 setters. It just seems right in the year of volleyball and the great competition we've had. So I don't think they'll disappoint.
Get me excited. Get me excited, Anna.
All right, so let's get a prediction here. The finals matchup. Who's it going to be?
Nebraska, Wisconsin, I think.
Nebraska, Wisconsin.
Right.
Yep.
Storybook ending.
There we go.
Totally not biased.
That's Anna Bellinghausen of Hurrdat Sports. She's down in Tampa covering the volleyball Final Four. Anna, thank you so much for your time, and have fun down there looking for some 4 p.m. dinner spots.
Yeah, thanks, Ravi. Send them my way.
Yeah, that's 3 o'clock our time, as I've learned. See you, AB.
That's Anna Bellinghausen from Hurrdat Sports. Coming up next, we're going to talk to Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7 about some Nebraska football. Woohoo! Let's go. Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. I'm Ravi, Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. We are joined now on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline by Brian Christopherson, senior writer for Husker 24/7. BC, how are you this morning?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you guys?
Good, BC.
We're doing well. You been busy at all this week, or how's that been going?
It's been busy, but it's also been sort of that busy where you're on guard as much as you're actually active. It feels like, so that it's a mixed bag there. But I think this is always exciting when there's something in the air, and you never know quite what's going to happen, but there's hope at least.
BC, it seems like there's something in the air right now because Omar Hales just tweeted out something like a Go Big Red tweet. We saw Keith Williams do something like maybe 15 minutes ago. What do you think is brewing in the air right now?
Well, there are
a lot of things.
Yeah, there still are targets out there. I'm not saying this is what it is. There's, we've mentioned there's an O lineman out of Bishop Gorman, like Rugaroli, who could be an option still at this point. Someone to consider maybe with that, but we'll see. So it could be something like that. But at this point, that's the beauty of tweets like that. People can guess like 5 different things and suspect they're right, and it'll give them a jolt in their step as they go to work today.
BC, is it possible that we're in Kyle McCord territory here?
I don't know if it's connected to that. I don't, but I feel good as of this minute. I feel good about Nebraska's chances with Kyle McCord. Now, I always get nervous when I go on radio with stuff like that, and that I hedge a lot. You guys know that already about me, because I how this world is in college football, and this thing is so fluid these days that you might think something's happening, and you might be 90% sure or 80% sure, and then there's a misdirection on you. So I'm always prepared for that possibility. But as for McCord, if you say right now, how do you feel about Nebraska's chances? I feel really good still. I'm optimistic there. That they're going to pull off the daily double as everybody's worried about.
BC, speaking of cryptic Twitter and tweeting, at what point during the flurry of eyeball emojis and fire emojis coming out from seemingly every player associated with the Nebraska football program on Monday night were you like, I think something's happening?
Yeah, it started about 2 or 3, I think, in the afternoon, where there was stuff picking up, and I was getting a text message here or there that's like something's happening. And I guess I knew that the Riola thing was maybe brewing, but just before Steve Wiltfong of 24/7 Sports put out his crystal ball flip. And when Wiltfong does something like that, you sit up very tall in your chair. I mean, he doesn't do stuff just to do stuff. Now that doesn't mean the horse race can't change at times. It does. Sometimes it flips this way and then it goes that way. But when a person like him is putting that out there, it's telling you which direction at that moment it's headed. And so, I know some people don't follow it as close. They're like, oh, some guy's just taking a stab in the dark here, at what's going to happen. No, I mean, there's some research and good sourcing behind stuff like that when it comes from certain people, and he's one of them. So once he did that, you're like all hands on deck, and we've remained that way since. And I still am, with an official visit expected this weekend. I mean, that tells you enough right there, doesn't it?
Well, how many more official visits does he actually need in order to feel like Nebraska is his home? Because whether they're unofficial visits to go see Uncle Donnie, or whether they're official visits that actually dock his time at Nebraska, it seems like this dude has been part-time living in Nebraska.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously has a strong connection. No one will forget. It was February when he made the one trip for the basketball game was going on at the same time, and he makes that walk down to the front row, and his name's getting chanted. And I just don't know if other places are in better spots as programs, of course, like where Georgia is right now. But there's such a want for something to change here, and for the corner to be turned. That has to be impactful to some guys when they really think about it. And like, I could go try to be that person who really gets this thing in a certain direction, and look at what the response might be. Cause he got a taste of it that weekend for sure, what the response would be. So I wonder if that's always stuck with him. But there's stuff you wonder about, like 4 days before all the noise came about a flip. He was tweeting at KJ Bolden about joining the Georgia family. So obviously there was something very late in the process that sort of twisted that toward a possible different direction. So it'll be interesting as this story gets written more fully, and you don't know if every detail will come out, what all has transpired the last week. But it has been one of the most fascinating recruiting moments I've seen in Husker football was Monday. There's no doubt. It might be unrivaled, really, the attention it got, not just here, but across the country, and how, you're getting people from the West Coast, the East Coast, writers from every national outlet are talking about this thing. And that's something I've never seen with Nebraska recruiting. So it was a pretty amazing moment.
We're talking with Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7. BC, part of that's because of the surprise of it all, right? Like,
yeah,
most of the big time recruits, there's some momentum building. Like, if he had committed to Nebraska back in somewhere between February and April, or whenever he ended up committing to Georgia, that wouldn't have felt like this. It would have been a huge deal, right? But it wouldn't have felt like this. Part of this is because it came out of nowhere, seemingly.
Yeah, I mean, there were layers to it. That's one of the pieces. Then you're talking about a top 5 recruit. Then you're talking about his family history with Nebraska. That's an interesting sidebar. And then it's Georgia, but if it's Georgia or Alabama on the other end of any of the thing like that, people always are like, oh man, how'd that happen? Because it's sort of just expected to always happen their way. So I am as interested in as anybody to find out some more details on that one, and what has happened. But it definitely seems like a real thing that's a possibility for Nebraska, and it's got recruits excited. I know about that. I've talked with a couple of them besides the eyeball emojis. They're like Ja'Cory Barney. I was speaking with him, I think it was Saturday, and this was before the Raiola stuff, but he was just talking about, as a receiver, like, getting that game changer at quarterback and what that can mean, and how the whole offense is shaped around that guy, and it can change everything. And so there's a lot of guys coming in this class, and young players from last class, who really expect 24 to be different. And if Nebraska can, land these 2 QBs in this last week, maybe this gives the jolt that was sort of missing from not having bowl practices, because that's been sort of a bummer, not having anything going on with that. And at least there's this in the air that has some people kind of rallying with excitement, and the fan base needed this too. Last week when I was on the show, Andrew was asking about that splash. You need that splash moment. And I think Andrew was more right than my answer to him was that this fan base is desperate for it. They need something to hold on to and get fired up about. It's not that they don't think Rule doesn't have a process and that it's going to work over the long haul, but for the months ahead, it's nice to go to Christmas or something like that and be like, we got this guy and we got this is where it can go. And maybe that can happen.
especially if some of your relatives are from Iowa and you have to rub something in their face there a little bit. BC,
that seems like a something that's personal to you.
No, it's fine. BC, I know there's some other things to talk about besides quarterback, but before we move on from the situation, you mentioned, at some point you think we'll find out some additional details about how and why this happened and kind of why it happened at the stage that it did. Have you started hearing anything or started putting anything together on what happened on the Georgia side of things? It certainly seems like the NIL, maybe some promises not being followed through were a factor, but have you started getting any details on that and trying to put that together?
I've probably heard some of the same rumblings you have, Ravi, and I just don't know enough to say that what it is yet. I'm kind of in that I'm trying to figure it out and interested just like anybody. You never know. What I would say from Nebraska's end is I do think there's been times where people have wondered how good is the NIL setup here? How's that really working? And this could be a big statement moment. I'm not speaking as much just from Rilo, but like from any of these transfer guys, if they get them in, about what can get done from that side of the fence. People heard Rule the other day on his interview with McAfee and how he says the collective here is in a really good spot. And this could be a big statement if you could get a couple QBs for Rule in this program, because people wonder how he's going to react to like that. Hey, you got this weak spot on your roster. What do you do as a head coach in this offseason? And the analogy I used in my writing was, I feel like Husker football has settled here sometimes, and I've fallen into this with previous staffs where it's like that 5-foot putt where you're trying to cozy it down and just like not run it by the hole, and it's very timid and you don't get it there. And I feel like maybe they're taking the break out of it now. They're attacking up and there's some confidence, and people really, I think, need that and appreciate that. And they want to see it from the staff. They want to see that the NIL can do that sort of thing. So if this all comes together, that will be a big statement on a multiple fronts. From Georgia's end, I don't know enough to say that it was this or that. So I'll wait.
BC, some other news coming out that same night outside of the frenzy that we've been talking about for the first 11 minutes of this interview. Bryce Benhart, Isaac Gifford announcing they're returning. How much do you think the noise of having major improvements in certain position groups like quarterback next year has impacted decisions like this from these guys? Do you think they'd be returning regardless just to play another season of ball? Or am I believing in the idea that they see where this team could go next year and just want to be a part of it?
I can't say yes or no to that, but which if it affected it or not. But I do remember a couple years ago with the 21 guys. Remember when like Doman and like 5 defensive guys came back, and they were a pretty good defense that 21 season. I know in that case, that was one where they like got together and decisions by one guy did impact decisions by another guy. So I've always kept that in mind that does matter. And when you see like Ty Robinson before the season even ends, like coming up to the press conference being like, yeah, I'll be back. And then Ben Scott, we hear a few days after I was in the weight room and he's planning to be back. I have to think as a competitor, you're like, okay, the pieces are here. If you really believe that you were that close, and I know that's a bad word with the fan base, but inside the walls, I don't think it is. If you believe that, and then you see 2 or 3 guys going, I can't help but think that affects your mind a bit, like to kind of push you that extra step to say, well, all right, let's do this. Plus, I think it's their best opportunity maybe with where their football careers are at. I never begrudge anybody who's spent like 4 or 5 years in college just getting to the next season in their life. I think people are too hard on guys like that sometimes. Like Garrett Nelson gave a lot to this program, and it was time for the next season in his life, he thought, and he took a chance, and so be it. But this is huge. I mean, Gifford to me is one of the top 3 players on this team. He's a guy who saves plays once or twice a game too, where he'll track down something a yard short of the first down when it looks like trouble. And then Benhart became a guy that people are believing in this year. He changed the whole narrative about him. So you got to give him a lot of credit.
BC, I wanted to talk a little transfer portal of guys that don't play the quarterback position. I know that a lot of attention has been paid to Prince Will's brother, Prince Lee.
Yeah.
I know that I believe Julian Fleming is still on campus today, the Ohio State receiver, or he was yesterday at least. Who are some of the guys that you're looking at? I know there was a weird rumor about Trevor Etienne that I don't know where that actually came from or if there's any truth there at all. But there's at least a couple guys, one on campus, one with obviously a brother on campus here, that there's some connection to Nebraska. How are you feeling about some of those guys that Nebraska might be able to land outside the quarterback spot?
We've felt at our site since last week that Fleming was a real possibility. And we know that this is like not a news flash that they need a receiver, but we know besides just Fleming coming in that they've wanted to add one if they can in this class, because I was talking with a couple of recruits and they've been transparent. The coaches have with them that like, yeah, we'd like to add one more veteran receiver. Fleming would certainly fit that bill in a big way. He had Penn State interested in him too, and took a visit there. And, he's from that area, I believe, but I think Nebraska's got a real shot because I do think they can be competitive with the NIL stuff. And I think there is stuff to, I don't think coaches like using the word sell, but there is stuff to sell despite the offense being so bad. And sometimes that's like, we couldn't be what we wanted to be because we didn't have you here, like you can say that to guys and that really appeals to a competitor. And if you can get guys like McCord or a Fleming to see like, hey, we got this guy, Malachi Coleman over here, this guy, Jalen Lloyd, and they're young players and we're really excited about them, but they need that mentor. They need that guy to show them one more season. Like this is how it's supposed to look and watch them grow with you. It can be really good. I could think that could be really appealing. So getting away from some of the other guys you asked, but Fleming really interests me. Princely, obviously, because of the name and, his brother's tweeting at him and back and forth right after it happens. I mean, you can't pass on him, I don't think, if he wants to come play with his brother or he's interested. And I do know Rule has a very strong connection with that family that stretches back to when I think he's recruited at least two of the brothers, in that family, or tried to recruit them. So I give Nebraska a shot there, but I don't know where that stands at this hour. I know he visited down at an SEC school a couple days ago, and so there's going to be competitors because he's a really good player and he's going to command a lot of attention. They also have a defensive back, Blyhill, who played at St. Francis in the FCS, and he's supposed to come in the 15th through the 16th. Kind of an out of the nowhere one, but obviously, when you see a guy like that who is supposed to visit, who you didn't even know about, they've done their research and they see something in him, and he's a long, rangy guy that could be a DB ad, or at least someone they're looking at. So it looks like DB is a spot where maybe they would add one of those 4 or 5 portal guys.
BC, going back to this coaching staff for a moment, because it was a top priority to get Tony White's contract restructured and out of the way. But then Donovan Raiola gets a $500K annually in terms of his contract now. Now, in the offensive line took major strides from last year, from the last year to this year, and added that huge recruiting win with Grant Bricks just over a week ago. Take Dylan out of the equation. Is that enough? Is the strides you saw from the offensive line in the recruitment of Grant Bricks, is that enough to get you to say he's deserving of this pay bump? Or would you like to see more improvement at the O-line position and the development of guys like Sledge and Goldman and Gatula before making that claim?
Yeah, it's a good question, Andrew. I want to be clear on something that I think some people don't know. I'm not saying you don't, but Bruns wrote this story on Sunday. We actually had one of our, it got picked up, and so I think it got misconstrued a bit, the timing on it. Like, we requested his contract last week just because we always look at contracts at this time of year. Sure. And the reason we requested it was because he had previously been on a deal because he was the one guy retained where his contract was supposed to end at 23. So we're like, okay, what happened there? Did they bump him to, so was he on the same timetable as the other guys? So we wanted to make sure that he was had a deal through 24 at least, which he does now. And what we learned was we don't know exactly when that contract was signed. He got the pay bump, but what I'm saying is it was redacted to the dates, but that could have been done like, in the middle of the season. It could have been done just before the season started. That's an important detail because it tells you, he got that bump. I think before, it wasn't like it just happened and this Dylan Raiola stuff has happened. Some people are connecting the two, and I don't think they should. But to your question, I think one of the biggest things I noticed this season, which might apply to why that happened, is he was like, it felt like right in the thick of it with Satterfield as far as like when they're talking about run game stuff. And when you listen to Marcus at press conferences, he would always speak about talking to Donnie about like what he's seeing in the run game and this and that. Of course, he would do that with his O-line coach, but it sounded to me like it was almost an extra step. Like they really feel like this guy is great on game day at like helping them out and process things about what's going on the field and the blocking stuff they need to use. And so when you kind of think about some of the stuff you heard in the season and the way Rule and Satterfield value him, it doesn't really surprise me. And I did think they got a bit better as the season went on. I think they still got to get better, though. So, I mean, they took a step, and now let's see them take 2 steps next year. That's the big key.
BC, a couple minutes left here. You kind of mentioned the fingers that Donnie had in the run game pie as part of the offense. There's been a lot of rumors swirling around about a potential quarterback coach coming in, maybe having a pass game coordinator title attached to that as well. How likely do you think it is at this point that we see Marcus Satterfield moved from QB coach, offensive coordinator to tight end offensive coordinator, and somebody's brought in as the quarterback's coach and maybe either a co-OC or a pass game coordinator?
Yeah, I think it's still possible that for sure that you could move some chairs around. Don't know that for certain, but I think it's a move that could be done in part because Josh Martin technically was an interim this last year, and I know he's been out recruiting, and I know guys have stuck to their roles for now. It's a long football season, though. There's other guys who you could maybe bring in if you wanted to at the QB coach spot who are maybe like in the league now, or they're still coaching. It's possible. So I think people should be patient to have a full answer on that. But my short answer, because I usually give 2 long answers, my short one is that I really think that still can happen. I do.
That's Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7. BC, we love your long answers. That's why
we're good with those.
That's why we have you on the big spot here.
I filibuster. But yeah, I always appreciate coming on, and I do think the last thing is definitely possible, though. It's a good question, and I think it's one of the main things to still monitor as we go through December and early January.
I'm not gonna make you say it. I'm just gonna clear my throat here. Glenn Thomas. Glenn Thomas. BC, enjoy the rest of your day. Hopefully we have some news here and not just cryptic tweets from Nebraska staffers, and let's get this thing rolling.
Yeah, that'd be nice to put a period on the end of the sentence for sure. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, BC. Always great stuff.
That's Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7. Great as always from BC. He comes to us on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline. Don't forget, Warhorse Sportsbook, best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets. Andrew knows it better than most. You can go to Lincoln at the casino or to Horseman's Park in Omaha. That's 6303 Q Street to place your bets. You got straight bets, parlays, live in-game bets, props. You can bet on nearly every major sporting event. Go to warhorsecasino.com/sportsbook or download the Warhorse Casino app for all the details and full house rules. Warhorse Sportsbook, no bets, no glory. Coming up next, we've got more Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Andrew Rogers here with me. We are live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, the H&H Chevrolet stage, and we are on AM 590 ESPN Omaha and ESPN Tri-Cities. We are joined now by our friend Kevin Sjuts.
Sorry, it's that time of year.
He's the sports director for 1011 News in Lincoln. Kevin, how are you this morning?
Good morning. The screaming of Kevin, yeah, I'm used to that. But the one that's more commonly said in my house is, Kevin, you're such a disease.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a great line.
It's not very nice.
My kids actually love to drop that in, beyond Christmas season. You're what the French call les incompetents.
That actually sounded really nice.
Well, I don't know if it was said correctly, but that is, Home Alone, probably my youngest son, probably his favorite movie, regardless, beyond Christmas. I think he just loves that movie.
Well, it's a good thing you weren't left off the flight to Tampa, huh?
Well, I feel obligated to tell you guys the temperature today, just because I am.
Oh,
here.
good.
How dare you?
It's 65 degrees right now at 9:30 Eastern time, with a high today of 76.
Well, don't worry. It is a balmy 25 here in Nebraska. So
we do have the sun,
and it's a high of 45 coming on now. So yeah, how you like that?
Yeah, joke's on you, Kevin.
Yeah, heat wave, baby. That's, sure. I'll take my 65 in the morning.
Hey, well, I probably would too, but whatever. So you made it down to Tampa. Did you see any recruits on your flight? Because apparently that's what everybody's been doing in Nebraska, is they just see quarterbacks and linemen and whoever else on their flight. You see anybody cool on your flight?
No, because I was leaving Lincoln. All the flights with notable people are coming into Lincoln. So, just me and some volleyball fans heading down for the Final Four. National semifinals start tomorrow, and I'm in the arena right now, Emily Arena. And I got to tell you, if you have tickets and you're in row W, you are money. Row W, seat 5 right now. You're about mid-court, about 15 rows up, and probably the best seat in the house.
I'm guessing that's where you're sitting right now.
It's exactly where I'm at. I kind of picked out just for you guys. I figured I would try to get a great vantage point and enjoy just some good conversation as I prepare for a busy day of coverage.
Well, you know what? You have me picturing the arena right now, just like a good play-by-play announcer, like the perfect ideal seat for the match. Like you're doing your job.
Well, to take it another step further, there's like little huddles of employees. They're kind of scrambling right now because the doors open at 10 a.m. for Nebraska practice. And you can tell they're kind of frantically tying up all the loose ends because the seats are going to start filling up here in a few minutes, and they've got all those loose ends. And apparently the NCAA attire for this tournament, a lot of pastel colors.
Oh,
just trying to paint the picture for you guys.
All right.
Okay. Kevin, as you've been down there, how many Nebraska fans have you run into? I know that you said you had some on your flight. Does it seem like there's a pretty good contingent down there?
I can't really answer that to this point. I flew late last night, so I didn't have a ton of fans, but it does sound like there is a good amount of Nebraska fans. I'm sure you guys saw the video of when the team arrived yesterday. That looked awesome and electric, and there were some folks at the hotel when Nebraska arrived as well. So I don't know that the arena is going to be half full of Nebraska fans, but Husker Nation is going to show out. And it sounds like this building seats about 20,000. Sounds like if it's not sold out, it's going to be pretty close to.
Now, Kevin, speaking of gameplay now, it's been all business so far for this team. They've made their run, staying cool, calm, and collected. How have you seen this team bury the emotion when they've had to, but also ignite that fire when they needed a spark? Because it's a hard thing to balance, but I think this Husker team has done a really nice job of it.
Well, as John Cook said, as the stakes get higher, the team gets better. Some of their sluggish matches have been against teams that, they could just roll out of bed and throw on the uniform and beat. But as the tournament has progressed, Nebraska has played better and better. I still think the Georgia Tech match in the regional semifinals, that's the best they've looked this entire season. So curious to see what happens against Pitt on Thursday. This is a fascinating matchup, guys. Pitt is one of the best offensive teams in the country. They lead college volleyball in hitting percentage, and Nebraska's number one against in opponent hitting percentage. So we'll see what the emotion looks like tomorrow. Obviously, a huge stage. There's a lot that happens at the Final Four, and you're dealing with a young team. But we've learned so far over the course of this season for Nebraska, those elements, the things you would think would affect the team and their performance, they don't seem to apply.
We're talking with Kevin Sjuts from 1011 News in Lincoln. Kevin, you mentioned that those things tend to not apply to Nebraska. Is it kind of surprising that with the, pretty young age of this team that they aren't more affected by those things?
I think so, but it was from the very beginning of the season that, the team said age doesn't really matter with this team because they've all been playing volleyball for a really long time, going back to elementary school, club, high school. A lot of these, Kennedy Orr, she was playing high school volleyball as an 8th grader. So am I surprised a little bit, but not so much, just because the maturity of the team is pretty remarkable.
Kevin, as we move away from volleyball, obviously the semifinal match tomorrow night, if Nebraska wins the final on the 17th, this could be between volleyball, between what's happening on campus with Nebraska football this weekend. This could end up being one of the bigger weekends we've seen in Nebraska athletics in a pretty long time.
No doubt. And we didn't really think football was going to give us many storylines here over the next couple of weeks. And then all of a sudden, this could be a monumental weekend for this football program. Obviously, it's huge for volleyball. But now football joins the fray, and then the men's basketball team has a pretty big road game on Sunday. So this could be a very exciting weekend. And then I guess to kick it all off, it's Thursday volleyball, Nebraska Pitt, which, I'm not going to just sneeze at that match. I think it's going to be a pretty good one.
Now, Kevin, speaking of Nebraska football and all the news that has kind of come out this week, we've been regurgitating a lot of the Kyle McCord, Dylan Raiola situation. And one of the things we brought up earlier on in the show is that we think it's actually not a turnoff to a potential Dylan Raiola if Nebraska were to still get a Kyle McCord in the room. And then we kind of broke it down just based on, previous examples of NFL draftees. You had Justin Fields in front of CJ Stroud. You had Mac Jones in front of Bryce Young, and et cetera. Do you look at it kind of like the same way, that is more of a benefit than a knock for somebody of Dylan Raiola's caliber?
I'm fascinated to hear you guys say that, because on the surface, I think, I'd be stunned. Me personally, I just would be shocked if both of them chose Nebraska. I feel like it's one or the other. But I think ultimately what we need to know to really answer that more accurately is, what does the NIL look like? That could persuade somebody to come here and spend a season, if not two, on the sidelines, as long as you're getting paid. That's not to say those guys aren't competitive, but I do see the benefits. I still think that both of those guys are, quote, game-changing, program-changing quarterbacks. It's hard to imagine one of those guys not playing next year. So I'm very interested to see how this all plays out. I don't know who's 1A and who's 1B if you're Matt Rule, because you like them both. And that's what really lies inside the intrigue of this all.
Kevin, you brought up Nebraska basketball, who I terribly omitted as part of my big Nebraska weekend, but they're coming off of a big win against Michigan State in Lincoln, bouncing back from that couple-game losing streak to Creighton and Minnesota. You mentioned this game at Kansas State coming up here. Got about a minute left here. How important is it to you in your mind for them to maybe get on a little 3-game winning streak before they head back into Big Ten play at the beginning of January?
Not only a 3-game winning streak, guys, but they need to win away from Lincoln. That's, they had the neutral site win up in Sioux Falls, but I think getting a Power 5 conference victory on somebody else's court is going to be really important for this team, because we saw what happened when Nebraska went up to Minneapolis. And Kansas State, they're interesting to me. I did a pretty deep study on them as I was filling out my top 25 this week. I considered them. I think that they need a few more wins to maybe crack the top 25, but right now they're a pretty salty bunch, and they've got some inroads to try to make some moves with college basketball. But Jerome Tang, he's got that team getting better every single week.
Kevin, real quick, is this where you expected Nebraska to be as far as the basketball team at this point in the season?
No. I thought they would have a more marquee win at this point in time.
Fair enough. That's Kevin Sjuts. He's the sports director for 1011 News in Lincoln. Kevin, we appreciate your time as always. Enjoy Tampa, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, boys.
Thanks, Kevin.
That's Kevin Sjuts from 1011 News in Lincoln. Good stuff there as always. Coming up next, got a little countdown list I want to get to. I know we've been pretty hyped about Dylan Raiola, but there's been some other times I've been hyped up about player acquisitions as well. We'll get to that next on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. We're on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, and ESPN Tri-Cities. We are brought to you by our friends at Dyer Law. Dyer Law has you covered if you're in a personal injury accident. You can count on the Dyer Law team to provide you with a helping hand when you need it, no matter what you're dealing with. Call the Dyer Law team at 402-393-7529 or visit dyer.law to chat with trusted professionals about your personal injury claim. That's DYER.law. All right, so there was obviously there's been a lot of hype around certain players coming to Nebraska in the last couple days. Their initials might be DR, not Dr. Dylan Raiola.
And KM.
And KM, but I think the hype went to a whole other level.
It did with
Dylan. So it kind of got me thinking back, because as on Monday evening, we talked a little bit about this a little bit yesterday. On Monday evening, I'm going through Twitter. I'm going through some people that I talk to that have some information and trying to figure out what's going on and what's real and what's not. And it's kind of this really exciting sort of adrenaline rush type thing, trying to, like, you're thinking, am I going to be the first person to actually know that Dylan Raiola is coming to Nebraska? And of course you're not, because I'm asking people that already know, right? But you kind of get this adrenaline rush and it feels good. And so I was trying to remember, not just in Nebraska football, although it could be Nebraska football for sure, but an off-season happening, an off-season storyline with any sport that got you, like, what are the top 3 events in the offseason that got you this hyped? And I'll give you my number 3 just so we can.
Does it have to be an off-season thing? Could it be
off the field? Off the field.
Okay.
So, like, obviously big games get you super hyped and whatever. Could be in season, to be fair, although we are the official off-season champions here at Nebraska.
Always.
But
every year,
just off the field. So it could be in season, but off the field. Like one of them for me, and I know Husker fans are going to hate this, but one of them for me was when Doug McDermott announced he was coming back for his senior year at Creighton. Most people kind of assumed he was going to go. He had averaged, 20-some points a game as a junior. He was a 2-time All-American at that point, and it seemed like he was going to go. He was probably going to be a first-round pick. He decides he's coming back. You have the magical senior year for Doug McDermott. I was hyped when Doug McDermott decided he was going to come back to Creighton for his senior year. So that's kind of an example of what I'm talking about. Do you have one?
So the first one for me was when the Cardinals traded for Nolan Arenado.
Oh, that's a big one.
Completely fleeced the Colorado Rockies.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Travis. I know you're listening. That trade was outrageous, and across Major League Baseball, I think every
better or worse than the Mookie Betts trade.
Dude, I have no clue, but you grade the Cardinals an A, you give the Rockies an F. It's pretty close.
Yeah,
they're neck and neck with one another.
Yeah.
Austin Gomber and Elias Montero they have not panned out for the Rockies.
Nothing.
Now, have they played for the Rockies? Sure. But they're not all-stars. They're not superstars, and the Cardinals got a superstar in that deal.
Yeah.
Nolan Arenado was one of my favorite players in baseball before he became a Cardinal. His defensive ability, also his pairing with his bat. Like, he had a down year on the year the Cardinals traded for him, but let's not forget that just a year ago, he placed 3rd in MVP voting, and Goldschmidt won the MVP that season. So I hope nothing changes here, because Arenado is my favorite player on the St. Louis Cardinals. I even bought his official replica jersey from the Cardinals store. Like, normally you go to, I have my favorite DH Gate app, which is like a jersey you get from China. You get it for $40. And that's
so you
how
I bought the real deal.
Right. But I went and did the real thing.
Okay.
I paid $180 or something for this jersey. And it's my favorite jersey, but he's my favorite player. And that right there was number one for me. Your Doug McDermott moment is because Creighton is number one for you.
Yeah.
In most cases. the Cardinals are number one for me in most cases. And when you pair it with your favorite player at the same time, I mean, dude, it's a match made in heaven.
Totally fair. McDermott's actually my number 3 in terms of most hyped.
Hyped, maybe,
but it was a big
Creighton news for you is
up there for sure.
It's top priority.
The moral of the story with the Nolan Arenado thing is don't trade superstars, guys. You're never going to get value, regardless of sport. Okay, we've talked about Mookie Betts, we've talked about Nolan Arenado, but I mean, regardless of the sport, you're not going to get value for your superstar. It's almost impossible. And unless you are 100% positive they are not re-signing, like Shohei Ohtani with the Angels, or that you're not going to try and re-sign them, do not trade superstars. It never works. You never get value, and you always look back at it and go, yeah, I probably should have just paid him.
Well, and you know, baseball's one of those games where when you have a superstar, it's hard to get another superstar. It's like what we talk about in the NFL. Like there was something going around this morning on ESPN National Radio, and the hypothetical was, if you're Chicago, do you trade 1 and 5 to the Chargers for Justin Herbert? And do the Chargers take that deal? And it was like, wait a second, like Justin Herbert, despite like being on a bad team and not being like he's kind of like a Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah, he's not on a playoff
team.
Just doesn't win
like
much.
He has great numbers, but he doesn't win with the team.
Doesn't win much.
He's still considered a top 6 quarterback in the NFL. And do you roll the dice on Caleb Williams
or Drake May or
and
whoever?
Expect that to be what Justin Herbert can be? You don't trade your superstar just because things are going wrong, unless you know you're getting significant value in return.
Especially if you are in a situation where it's like, hey, let's try and get a new coach in here first. Let's get rid of Brandon Staley because you like a lot of the other pieces on the team. So yeah, moral of the story, don't trade your superstars. I don't know that we're going to get to all 3 of these. One real quick one for me is, this is a Nebraska one. When Marlon Lucky committed to Nebraska,
back the most recent five-star.
Yeah. He was at the time the top rated running back in the country. I think Jonathan Stewart and him flipped a couple times, depending on what rankings you end up looking at. But Marlon Lucky committing to Nebraska was kind of one of the moments where you're like, oh, this Callahan thing might work. And obviously things went differently after that, right? But it was, you know, he brought in like a 4-star quarterback in Harrison Beck, and then he was landing these huge recruits. And then Marlon Lucky commits, and you go, oh, wait a second.
You're like, heck yeah.
This was a really, really big deal at the time. I believe until Dylan Raiola commits, which I believe is happening, the highest rated recruit in the recruiting era, in the internet recruiting era in Nebraska history. So,
Marlon Lucky.
Yeah, huge get for Nebraska. And it was enormous at the time. I'm not sure people really appreciate the hype around him coming in because of the recruiting websites were pretty new at that point. They were only a couple, 2-3 years in at that point. And this idea that Nebraska was competing for the best players in the country was a huge deal.
The second one for me was when the Bears traded up for Justin Fields.
Okay.
Like the amount of excitement I had in my living room at home.
Sure.
And my $40 DHgate China jersey that I bought after that, because he wasn't Nolan Arenado, but he was Justin Fields and the future at that position. Now, granted, who knows what the Bears do next season if they keep him or if they move on from Fields. But that moment, that level of excitement I had of after the woes of Mitchell Trubisky to now getting Justin Fields was a huge uplifting moment as being a Bears fan, because I've been through so much hardship with Cody Parkey double doinking and the Bears just kind of giving up every draft pick in the world for Khalil Mack, which worked out for a few years, but didn't work out in the long term. That may be that one trade that actually worked out, trading a superstar, to be quite honest, because they had so many first-round picks. But then the Raiders, Shane, didn't sign any of the first-round picks that they used in that deal with the Bears. So long-term is what I mean. But that draft right there, bro, I can't tell you. I was jumping up and down. My niece is sleeping, and everyone's like, shh, and I'm like,
full disclosure, Justin Fields is the guy I wanted the 49ers to draft in that draft. I wanted them to get Justin Fields. I liked him better than Trey Lance. I liked him better than Mac Jones, obviously. I wanted Trey Lance over Mac Jones, but neither one of those guys are working.
Yeah, and then you settled with Brock Purdy.
But not settled. MVP Brock Purdy.
What franchise makes?
Was that the right draft? That's not the same draft.
No, that was the next year.
Yeah,
that was the next year.
Out of the Bears and the Raiders, who makes worse decisions?
Raiders always.
Yeah, hands down.
Last one here, and this was honestly the most hyped I've ever been, and it's the dumbest one. Okay,
I have a pretty dumb one too for my last one.
Do you remember the name Daisuke Matsuzaka?
I do remember Daisuke Matsuzaka.
Do you remember?
He had the pitch that was
gyro
like the gyro ball.
Yes. So back in 2006, the Red Sox coming off a bad year, they missed the playoffs in 2006. They are in the thick of things. This is like a pre-Twitter era, like at least in mass, the way we get news from it now. And so I am like searching on ESPN. I'm searching on like message boards, whatever, trying to figure out if they're getting Daisuke Matsuzaka. They paid like $40 million just for the right to sign him. And he was super mediocre. Didn't like to throw strikes. But man, I cannot describe to you how hyped I was for Daisuke Matsuzaka and his gyro ball.
The last one for me was when the city of St. Louis sued Stan Kroenke for nearly $800 million, taking the Rams away from the city. Like, don't get me wrong, I am a Bears fan, but having an NFL team in your city is super exciting, and it's a great source of revenue for the city as well. And when Kroenke took the Rams away like he did after proposing a new $1 billion stadium, it was ridiculous. It killed Rams fans on the inside. And then when he had to pay out $800 million, it was a blessing.
Matt DeMarinis coming up next. Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Andrew Rogers here with me as well.
Hello.
We are joined now on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline by our guy, Matt DeMarinis from the White and Blue Review. Matt, what's going on, buddy?
Hey, Robbie. How are you, bud?
We are doing good here. Creighton's got off to a pretty solid start, I would say, in the men's basketball season. Just that one loss to a, turns out, pretty darn good Colorado State team, even if it looked incredibly ugly in the process. But as you kind of, before we get on to UNLV and Alabama and kind of this little bit of a gauntlet of a stretch here that they face after this UNLV game, I guess through the first 9 games, we're about what? A little more than a quarter of a way through the season. How would you evaluate what you've seen from Creighton so far this year?
I mean, I think everything's tracking as expected. Like, they shoot the absolute hell out of the ball. So that was a box to check. They play pretty good. I mean, they execute that defensive game plan to a pretty high level. You know, they know Ryan Kalkbrenner is one of the best defensive bigs in the country, and they like to set bear traps for teams to say, go ahead and go shoot against them if you want to. We're not going to shoot threes unless you want to chuck them from deep. So I don't know. They're checking a lot of boxes right now. I think, it's just everything that's right in front of them in the near future is basically just barometer tests, I guess, right? Like, just how good they actually are, where they stack up with the other teams in the country that are playing good basketball right now. But, these seasons are really long. You kind of segment them up a little bit and, just see who can, when March rolls around, you just kind of see who's peaking and whatnot. But right now, I think they're playing at a really high level. They've done what they need to do in terms of taking care of the teams they've played so far in the fashion they've done it. And now it just kind of ramps up a little bit. I think, it's nice. Another game that probably fits into the cog of what the rest of the schedule has looked like so far. UNLV's either banged up or missing, in Keelan Boone's case, missing a key player because NCAA just feels like dragging their feet on eligibility issues. So they're not going to get the best version of UNLV that we might see this year. So it's a big advantage. Creighton could be one that gets away from the running Rebels, but they also shoot the ball really well. They have a lot of good shooters on the roster. And so if Creighton's not hitting at their normal level, it could be an interesting back and forth game. But after that, basically Saturday is when that's go time. There's not like a. I guess I shouldn't say that. Georgetown and DePaul are still on the schedule. But, other than after Bama, it's not like you're not going to get many roll the ball out and do your thing kind of games. It's all going to be, chess matches and who can execute their style of play better kind of thing. So in a certain way, the season really ramps up on Saturday.
Well, Matt, when you're looking around the Big East, in terms of Creighton's Big East title,
out having to have a stat, basically. Tristan Newton gets a little usage heavy, and not that Tyler Kolek doesn't, but I don't think Tyler Kolek needs to be the result of the play for him to have an impact on how the play results. You know what I'm saying? So I'd still lean Marquette. Still, to me, has played. When you look at ceilings of each team, how they've played so far, I think Marquette has still exhibited the highest ceiling of any team in the conference. UConn, maybe your argument for them being one of the tougher outs, or possibly the toughest out, is that maybe their floor is higher than anybody else's as well. So that's where they fit into that. But I would still pick Marquette because I think they're capable of playing what we've seen so far. They're capable of playing at a much higher level than anybody else in the league so far.
Matt, that's an interesting question because I think stylistically, in terms of how Marquette wants to play, that kind of leans more into what Creighton has been doing this year, whereas UConn sort of stylistically leans more into what Creighton had been doing the last couple years. Is that fair, or am I overgeneralizing there?
No, it's fair. I just think when you match up, like you're talking about matching up Creighton versus those teams.
Yeah, like stylistically.
Right. I think Creighton can combat and overcome what UConn does well better than they can combat and overcome what Marquette does well. Like Marquette has, like Tyler Kolek is a wizard, and they also have a facilitating 5-man who can play away from the basket and be comfortable with the ball in his hands, and Oso Ighodaro. So like that's something that UConn doesn't have. Like UConn, when you look at the UConn matchup and how it stacks up with Creighton, like Klingon versus Kalkbrenner, kind of the same type of big, right? Like Newton is a unique point guard in terms of the way he can score and rebound, facilitate. But Creighton also has those kind of guys on the floor as well in Baylor Shinerman and Trey Alexander. They all can do what Tristan Newton can do. And then you have your Alex Caravan, compared to Mason Miller / Isaac Strout, kind of similar in terms of the things they bring with the rebounding and the shooting and the floor spacing. But I think when you look at UConn, the way they match up with Creighton, you can find like similarities there in terms of how they match up. Marquette's kind of like the unicorn of the conference with the way they do things.
We're talking with Matt DeMarinis from the White and Blue Review. Matt, you mentioned obviously the shooting for Creighton this year. In one of our previous questions,
is that notable?
It's I think it is I think it's something to keep an eye on.
Has Baylor Shinerman taken 83s
in the first half? No, obviously the shooting is a dramatic improvement from last year. I think that's what we all expected. I think we expected them to sacrifice some things in terms of either other parts of the offense or maybe defensively in order to achieve that goal. Do you think there are any areas where they are markedly worse than they were last year, or have we not seen enough against high quality competition to be able to tell that yet?
Definitely a little of column B there, but I don't think there's any area where they're markedly worse than last year.
Maybe noticeably I don't know. Is there an area where you're like, I think they were a little better last year?
No, I really don't.
Okay,
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure if I feel that yet.
Okay.
Like I still think maybe physicality at the point of attack in like a 1-5, ball screen type of situation, like could be an area where Creighton's maybe not as potent as they were last year. But even then, like, I wouldn't say Ryan Nembhard was the most physical point guard in the world anyway. So like, I don't know what the gap between what Nembhard could do in terms of fighting over those screens and forcing, that like staying attached and forcing, that ball handler into that mid-range area of the floor to Kalkbrenner is a whole lot different than what Ashworth can do, at his best. Because they're both neither of them are like bulldog type point guards, right?
Right.
I think the difference is like right now, you could bring like a Sharif Mitchell off the bench last year and play him with Ryan Nembhard and have him fill that type of role as a defensive like test at the point of attack. Creighton doesn't have that this year, so they're missing that part of it. That being said, I still think they can execute their defensive game plan to a high level, just by being intelligent, by staying locked in defensively, understanding the assignment, and executing that to the best of their ability. Like, I don't think there would be a humongous drop off there because you still have Ryan Kalkbrenner as the anchor to it all. And you have guys like Trey Alexander who can guard the other team's best player and, shut their water off. And I think Baylor Shinerman is better defensively than he gets credit for. So, like, athletically, coming off the bus, maybe they don't look like they could be as imposing defensively as they were last year, but I still think they can execute what their defensive game plan is. And when you factor in how much better they are in terms of their offensive efficiency and their ability to space the floor and find multiple shooters that can get on heaters, I think it kind of washes a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, maybe they give up something defensively compared to last year's whatever. And I said this in the offseason too. Like, I could see their defense falling into like the 25-30 range, but I also could see their offense jumping into the top 5. So it'll be like a little bit of a give in terms of the scales balancing. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, they still end up being, one of the best teams in the country because of that balance.
Matt, another area that I've heard people say that they think that Creighton is maybe not quite as prolific at this year is, you mentioned Ryan Nembhard, his ability to get into the paint on whether it be screen and rolls or just through penetration in general. A lot of people point to that as an area where Creighton has not been as good this year. What are your thoughts about their ability to kind of break down a defense off the dribble and how that differs from last year?
Are we just responding to Twitter? This is kind of fun. I like this.
That's the entire radio show, man. I just find stuff on Twitter and.
Jackman 69420 says Creighton sucks at defensive rebounding. Yeah, I mean, I think that component of like a downhill, like make a play type of point guard is probably not there, but it's also there with Trey Alexander and Baylor Shinerman being able to attack and exploit downhill rim opportunities from the guard wing spot because of their spacing is better than it was last year. You know what I mean? So again, I don't want to cop out and give the same answer I just gave to the last question, but in a way, it kind of it takes care of itself in a different.
The trade-off is worth it, basically.
Well, I mean, the trade-off is just the trade-off. Like, I think Creighton can still score at the rim with a guard or a wing like Trey or Baylor, the same way Nembhard could because of their improved spacing. Because you have to stay attached to 4 of the players on the floor, and even Ryan Kalkbrenner is a guy that you can't necessarily just say, yeah, go ahead and live out there You have to stay attached to him because of what he does in DHOs, how he can stretch the floor with his shooting, all those kinds of things. So it's not like Ashworth isn't going to create the way Nembhard did, but Creighton has creators that can do what Nembhard did. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Matt, so
what's our next one?
Yeah. Mine's more of maybe another thinker for you, but maybe it's more of a quick answer for you just based on what you've seen. A part of the big three, Alexander, Shireman, and Kalkbrenner, who's one off the radar player, so to speak, on this team that's drawn your attention early as somebody that can really step up and be a difference maker once Big East play begins?
I think it's always Francisco Farabello.
See, I'm with you. That's my answer too.
He's the guy that just doesn't get the adulation he deserves.
And I think his defensive ability this year has taken a step forward.
Sure, and I think it's because he's a really intelligent basketball player. It's not like he's going to wow you athletically, physically, but he's, strong. He's smart. He's experienced. And honestly, like the thing with mapping out Creighton's ceiling, right, is, how far can they go, right? Like you need a team that has studs in stud roles.
Mm-hmm.
You also need studs in, auxiliary roles. So like you have to have, like it's the old coaching cliche, right? Like, can you be a star in your role? Like you have to have guys who just totally grab their role and embrace it and do the best they can with it, because everyone, when you go into the later you get into a season, the more high stakes games you're playing, your best players are going to have a harder time taking over games because they're going to be the focus. So the difference in terms of a deep run or not is what can Frederick King do in the non-Ryan Kalkbrenner minutes? What can Francisco Farabello do if he has to play 25 to 30 because of foul trouble or an injury, things like that. Like you always, what can Isaac Trout do? Which one of Isaac Trout or Mason Miller is hot that day?
Both.
The guys, yeah, both. In some instances. It's all about what type of impact can you have on the game without getting too far outside of what you do, who you are, and what the offense and defense are designed to do. And I think Francisco Farabello is a guy that, to me, probably flies under the radar every single game, but always makes a huge impact on winning from a consistent basis every single night. He's probably my pick for that particular topic.
Matt, I wanted to, you mentioned Mason Miller and Isaac Trout there. I wanted to mostly just tell everybody how right I am, and then you can agree with me, but I'll try and form it as a question here.
Boosting your ego, huh?
So, yep, that's literally the entire reason I do a show, Matt.
Ego boosting.
Hang up, sure, no problem.
The Isaac Trout and Mason Miller shooting a combined, I believe my math is close here, like 55% from three this season. They're 30 for 55 as a duo. They're just shooting the lights out of the ball between those two guys at the 4 spot. Before the season, a lot of people asked about the loss of Arthur Kaluma and what that means for Creighton. And my argument was, I think you can make the argument that he's a more physically talented guy, but that Trout and Miller are better fits for what Creighton wants out of that spot. Is that an accurate reflection of what we've seen from them and their shooting numbers this year? Is it just a hot start? Like, how do you weigh those two things?
Maybe. I think you could make an argument if I'm just saying, like, what if you only traded Stephen Ashworth for Ryan Nembhard, and then you kept Kaluma in his normal spot, and then didn't add Trout, right? Like, so you have Ashworth instead of Nembhard, and then you have
Miller and
Kaluma Miller as opposed to Trout Miller and Ashworth. So I can still see a world where Creighton is as good as they are right now with Kaluma Miller as opposed to Trout Miller. Because honestly, like, last I checked, like, Arthur Kaluma shooting 38% from three, I think, this year. If I'm not mistaken. Like, he's probably been, ever since I think everybody kind of latched on to that, what did Jerome Tang come out and say, like, he felt like Kaluma needed to have better buy-in or whatever. Like, ever since that game, he's been killing it. So
yeah, 39% from three this year.
Wow.
That's what I'm saying. Like, so you know what I mean? He's been really good. Like, he's been 82% at the line, 39% from three. He's efficient inside the arc as well, and he's doing what he always has done from a physicality standpoint in terms of being a tough physical defender and rebounding the heck out of the basketball on both ends of the floor. So I think there's still a world where, like, if you put an alternate reality Creighton team out there and you say, like, Kaluma's still a part of it, I think Creighton's still as good as they are right now, just in a different way. But there's no doubt about your point that Miller and Trout fit what Creighton wants to be this season with this roster because of the way they can space the floor around Ryan Kalkbrenner and allow Trey Alexander and Baylor Shinerman to be, to unlock their kind of creativity and playmaking skills because of the spacing around them. It's closer in my opinion than I think people would give it credit for because of the way I think Kaluma's feeling and because of the way he's also playing in this same season as Trout and Miller are.
Matt, last thing from me, has anything sounded the alarm bells in your head already this year for Creighton, whether it's a player or team issue? Has there been anything that has you saying, man, they've got some work to do?
Yeah, chemistry's garbage, man. I mean, I've never seen a team that hates each other. I'm just joking. Please don't cut that.
Cut it, Shane.
Hey, Shane, that's our new drop. Chemistry is garbage.
That's on TikTok.
Matt DeMarinis says Creighton has poor chemistry.
Yeah. No, there's no alarm bells right now. I mean, because I think everything in terms of figuring out if they're actually a Final Four national championship contender is kind of like right in front of them. It's coming up. We'll find out soon how much they still how far they have to go to get to that level pretty soon, I think. So there hasn't been an alarm bell yet. Like, I think everyone will be like, well, they lost by 20 to Colorado State. It's like, well, but they had, unbelievably bad shooting performances across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's just not going to happen consistently. So
yeah, Trey's not missing 13 shots.
Yeah, like, well, I just think if it's alarming, it has to be something that's a consistent trend that's exploitable. And I don't think hoping that Creighton misses 30 of 40 shots between those two guys is exploitable. You know what I mean? So it's just, you're basically hoping at that point. So no, nothing that's alarming at this point right now. Consistent.
Matt, we got about 2 minutes left here before we let you go. Obviously, the next four games at UNLV, Alabama at home, Villanova at home, at Marquette. Of those four games, based on what you've told us, is the at Marquette the one that you're most looking forward to as like a barometer of where this team's at?
Gosh, I don't know. I guess I kind of set that up earlier, didn't I?
You did. That's why. That's why I followed up with the question. I was kind of trying to.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Alabama is going to be a barometer because it's like, can Creighton actually score with an athletic team that likes to?
Yeah, physically they're challenging.
Yeah, sure. And then Villanova, going into the year, Villanova was actually, I picked Villanova second ahead of Creighton, right behind Marquette, and wasn't going to be surprised. The only reason I picked Marquette to win the league is because they won it last year, and I felt like that they deserved respect there. But I thought Nova was a team that could win the whole league. So I'm surprised at the up and down nature of their season so far. So I think UNLV, if they take care of business tonight in the fashion that I think they should, based on how UNLV is playing and what their roster looks like right now, I think these next three games should all be barometers and to an equal or similar degree.
That's Matt DeMarinis from the White and Blue Review. At another juncture, when we have more time, we're going to have the Kyle Neptune conversation at Villanova at some point. But
you have a Kyle Neptune conversation you want to have, huh?
Well, if everybody thinks they're as good as they are, and I am with you, there's kind of a variable there, though. It's like, well, maybe we have a Kyle Neptune problem. I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
All right. We need longer than 2 minutes, but I'm ready for it.
Well, it's good. We only got 30 seconds left, but we will have you back. We will have the Kyle Neptune conversation, and we will talk to you again soon. Thanks, buddy.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
See you, Matt.
That's Matt DeMarinis from the White and Blue Review. Coming up next, Florida State and the state of Florida still salty about not making the college football playoff, and they're taking their arguments to court. We'll find out what that's all about next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. We are coming to you here on a Wednesday from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, the H&H Chevrolet stage. Busy week for Nebraska around here. But that's not the only team that is not necessarily where they wanted to be for the postseason, and still making some waves, although albeit in a quite different way than Nebraska has been the last couple days, and that is the Florida State Seminoles. And to be clear, this is not Florida State doing this. This is the state of Florida doing this. But the state of Florida, the Attorney General, Ashley Moody, and I believe this is real. I mean, from everything I can tell, this is real. The state of Florida is suing the College Football Playoff Committee for the exclusion of Florida State. Their argument is...
Do you think she's in a bad Moody?
I see what you did there. Moses Moody? Trade him, part of Draymond. Get out of town. The sad trombone was for your joke, not mine.
Nope.
Nope.
It came after you last spoke.
The attorney. Thank you. That was me.
No, but that was me because it came after when I last spoke.
They're launching an investigation. This is a quote to examine if the committee was involved in any anti-competitive conduct in its unprecedented decision to exclude Florida State from the college football playoff. Now, the unprecedented decision obviously is Florida State is the first undefeated Power 5 conference champion to not be included in the college football playoff. Now, it's only been a decade, basically, of college football playoff, so we're not talking about a huge history here. But the argument is that the College Football Playoff Committee did something totally out of character from what they had shown. Their process was that they showed an obvious bias towards the Southeastern Conference, and that this decision cost Florida State and the ACC millions of dollars. Now, there's only one way that anything can come of this, and that's if first of all, if the College Football Playoff Committee and ESPN were the dumbest people alive and actually put down in writing that they needed to include an SEC team.
Right.
Because then it's collusion, it's anti-competitive practices, then you have a case.
Then there's a problem.
Right?
Because right now it's like not in court.
Right now they're investigating. They're kind of starting an investigation, and I assume
they're just subpoenaing documents.
Yes. And in order to do that, you have to create a legal action in order to subpoena documents. So that's where they're at right now. What they want to do is to see communication between ESPN, the College Football Playoff Committee, and the SEC to see if there was some sort of collusion to make sure the SEC was included. Now, I could definitely see that being the case, first and foremost. I can 100% see ESPN being like, hey, we really need to include an SEC team. That's kind of where our bread is buttered, whatever. Even though the ACC also has ESPN network ties, whatever. The SEC is the big dog there. We all know that it's basically Fox in the Big Ten and ESPN in the SEC versus everybody else. Because at first, this just comes off as sour grapes, right? And to be fair, that's mostly what it is. I'm guessing that's mostly what this ends up being, is just, hey, kind of some grandstanding of...
Yeah, it seems like, hey, I'm putting myself in front of this so the state of Florida knows I stand by my university, and then in 2 years when I'm up for re-election, hey, remember my name.
Yeah, it's like...
Remember me.
Yeah, I mean, attorney generals often have larger political aspirations. Good way for Ashley Moody to get her name, maybe for a seat in Congress or a governor spot or whatever. It's likely mostly that. But if you were to tell me that the SEC and ESPN and the College Football Playoff had communication about the SEC being included and needing the SEC to be included for non-football reasons, that's where it gets where you get into trouble, right? If you're talking about, hey, the SEC is the most competitive conference, like a one-loss SEC team is better than an undefeated ACC team, that's all fair game, right? Because those are football reasons. If you start having this conversation about money reasons, all of a sudden you may have some problems. I still don't know if you can win the case because it is a subjective.
It's all opinion based.
Yeah, it's a subjective committee, right? This is an entertainment product at the end of the day, and you get to decide who you want in that game if you're the College Football Playoff Committee, and kind of by default ESPN at that point. So I still don't know, even if they can prove collusion, which they may be able to be fair. Would not shock me. Even if you can prove collusion, I still don't know if that wins you the lawsuit. But I think at the very least, from a public relations standpoint, that would be a huge win for the ACC, for Florida State, and for the state of Florida. Even if they can just prove that, hey, there was collusion here, we're not going to get any money for it. But just so you all know, and it's above the table now, like, we need more transparency in this process.
Well, and if you look at the comments on the post that we got the information from, the majority of people are claiming nothing will come of it, and it's just a giant waste of time and money and resources. And that is kind of like the camp that I'm sitting in too, that it's just nothing can come of this. Nothing will come of this. This whole situation gives me very little to believe that something was actually said in the room that is going to put the committee in a tough spot, a tough situation where this could go to court because of how subjective everything is. The point that I just like don't get behind or can't get behind is when, you know, there's things that like when you look at the college football playoff, like criteria of how they go about choosing teams, they throw up key injuries and strength of schedule are two main ones. And nowhere does it list that an undefeated Power 5 team has to be in.
Sure.
And I understand like those points and principles, but if you really look at the principles, that's bullet point 4 on the list. It's not, if it was bullet point 1, then I could ride with you. But they literally have that as the last bullet point. And there's a reason that they have it in bullet point 1, 2, 3, 4. The first bullet point is conference championships won. That holds more power than key players missing for a game. Same thing with strength of schedule. Same thing with head-to-head competition. Same thing with comparative outcomes of common opponents being in front of other relevant factors, including unavailability of key players. There's a reason that's the bottom bullet point on the list. So I don't like when people go back and attribute to these principles, because I don't think you can really say because Jordan Travis isn't in this game, that's why Florida State was out, because you have to look at the other 4 above it, and Florida State has the edge in the other 4 above it than they do in that last bullet point.
Well, the other issue that you have there, if you're going back to the Jordan Travis thing, is they were still in the top 4 when Jordan Travis was injured, right? Going into that game, they were in the top 4. Jordan Travis was already injured. So that's a tough sell there. There's a couple of comments on the YouTube stream that I think are interesting. Amazing Daniel says, it sounds frivolous at first, but it's not like corruption in sports hasn't been uncovered before. And also, to be fair, the committee is largely like pretty old people. If they emailed something they weren't supposed to, would not be surprising.
Yeah. And it
also would not be the first time.
And you know what? That email will be found.
Yes.
It will be dug up and it will be used.
Jacob says, if they can prove that ESPN tampered, it's going to be chaos. They aren't going to win in court, but the public will freak out. And I think that's accurate. I don't think they can actually win an actual money settlement or anything like that. But if they can prove that there was tampering, collusion, whatever, between ESPN and the SEC, that would be a huge thing. And then Amazing Daniel chimes in, considering how openly they argued on air against FSU, it wouldn't surprise me one bit if it's on the record from meetings. Wouldn't be the dumbest thing they've ever done. Also accurate. So the point to me is, I agree with the idea that it's possible that ESPN and the SEC colluded. And if that happened, I do think that should be brought to light. because my initial reaction to this was just, guys, like, get over it. Like, I like Florida State, okay, and I wanted them to be included, and
you feel bad for them.
They deserved to be included. I also can understand being like, yeah,
without Jordan Travis,
are they one of the 4 best teams in the country? Probably not. Did they have one of the 4 best resumes in the country? Absolutely.
And you know what? That was my point before the committee even chose.
But if this is more to just see like, hey, we think they colluded and we want to be able to prove it, I can see that. It wouldn't shock me if some idiot sent an email that's like, hey, we need to make sure we include the SEC. Are they going to win any money? Absolutely not. I don't think so anyway. TK says they might. But I do think they might be able to prove some collusion, some undue influence, which is worth uncovering.
And you know what? Good for these lawmakers in Florida to take a stand and stand by your university. Like, I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't affect, like, my state tax dollars, and I don't have to worry about, like, are my resources being used properly? But I'm a fan of this approach and saying, like, hey, NCAA, I'm still going to dig it up whether you want me to or not.
Wrapping up the show with some Hurrdat Sports Trivia next. Wrapping up the show here on a Wednesday on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln, live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill on the H&H Chevrolet stage. We're about to play a little trivia, and our game is brought to you by Dingman's Collision Center. Dingman's Collision Center has 4 great Omaha area locations. They've been family-owned and operated in Omaha for over 25 years, and they've been voted first place best of Omaha 18 years running. They invest in the latest technology so they can work on all makes and models, and they invest in the community so that they can continue to be a great part of this community. With every car repaired, Dingman's gives back. Go check it out at dingmans.com for more information. And it's now time, our game master, to take it away. Andrew Rogers, what do we got?
Ravi, you have to leave the room, man.
Oh, no. All right.
You're facing off against Shane. Shane gets the answer choices. You do not. You get 1 Hail Mary, though, if you need it.
All right. I am leaving now. Somebody text me when I got to come back.
Make sure you bring your phone, though, so I can text you. You kind of picked it up, set it back down. Make sure you have the phone in hand. Shane.
What are we doing here?
We're playing trivia, man.
Oh, I thought we were playing Shane's World.
Nope. Trivia.
Oh.
Yeah, we're doing something a little bit different today.
Something a little bit different.
Having a little bit of fun, courtesy of Dingman's Collision Center. Now, Shane, you know how this works. You get the answer choices. Ravi does not. 3 questions, 1 tiebreaker. If you win,
I get $50.
Yeah, that's fine. If you lose, you have to try two jelly beans.
No.
You gonna take that deal?
No.
$50 against 2 jelly beans?
I dropped half of them on the floor.
Yeah, but we didn't put those back in the box.
I know.
And you could get 2 good ones.
No.
Man, I can't wait to tell Ravi that you said no to that deal. That seems like a solid offer. I'd do much more for $50.
All right, what do you got?
I'd eat the whole box of jelly
You eat
beans.
the whole box?
No, maybe not the whole box. All right, here we go.
Okay.
Question number 1. Play along at home if you'd like. Who's won the most Silver Slugger Award, Shane, in MLB history? Barry Bonds, Mike Piazza, or Alex Rodriguez?
What's the definition of the Silver Slugger?
Oh, my goodness gracious. Are you serious?
Yeah, what is it?
The Silver Slugger Award is the best offensive player at each position determined by coaches and managers in Major League Baseball. So it's a hitting award.
I'll take Alex.
Question numero 2. What is the lowest seed to win the NCAA tournament? Or who was, I should say, the lowest seed to win the NCAA tournament? Was it Washington, Villanova, or Arkansas?
I'm going to go with Arkansas.
He is going with the SEC school. I thought you were Ravi, and I thought you were cheating. But it's not. It's just our man, CG, Chris Gorman, wanting to get in on some trivia action. Hey, question number 3, Shane. Who holds the record for most passing touchdowns in college football FBS history?
FBS?
FBS.
Not FCS?
Not FCS.
I don't even know what the hell
not
FCS
D2.
is.
What?
I don't even know what the FCS is.
The FCS is like little bit lower end Division 1.
All right, what do you got? Who you got?
The FBS is like Nebraska and Iowa, those schools.
Okay, who you got?
Is it Case Keenum, Bailey Zappi, or Devlin Hodges?
Hail Mary.
That's the Hail Mary. The Hail Mary is you get the answer choices. You want a 50-50?
Yeah, what's a 50-50?
All right, your 50-50 is Case Keenum or Bailey Zappi.
I'll go with the first one, Case Keenum.
And your tiebreaker question, what seed was the team that won the NCAA tournament in question number 2? So question number 2 was, who was the lowest seed to win the NCAA tournament? What seed were they? And remember, this is closest to.
Closest to, so I don't get any options?
No options.
I'm going to go.
It's 1 to 16.
Is it a double-digit number?
I'm not giving you any more hints. I gave you 1 to 16.
Can you tell me what bracket they came out of?
I can tell you they're a team from.
Can you tell me what
1985?
You can tell me what year? That's the year it was.
I believe it was 85.
Oh, well then I'm going to go with Villanova because that's who it was, wasn't it?
You can't change your answer.
I'll go.
Do you want to go back and change your answer?
No, I'll just.
I may let you.
Okay,
That
I'll
could
go.
be nice.
All right. Yep, and 12,
And they're a 12 seed. Thank you.
which
All
is
right.
a little high.
I'm going to give Ravi a chance to change his answer then.
Okay.
At least once.
You want
You
to
could have guessed wrong.
go get him?
No, I just texted him, come back. Here he comes. All right, Ravi, I gave Shane, as you're walking back in, I threw Shane a bone. Okay? So I'm going to throw you a bone at some point as well. So Ravi's back in the chair.
All right, what's
Welcome
up?
back.
What do we got?
Okay, question number 1 for you. Who has won the most Silver Slugger awards in MLB history?
Ooh, okay. That is a tricky one. I gotta go longevity here. I'm gonna say Barry Bonds.
Question number 2. Who is the lowest seed to win the NCAA tournament?
Basketball,
Villanova.
in 1985.
You like that, Shane?
Yeah.
There you go. And question number 3. Who holds the record for most passing touchdowns in college football FBS history?
Okay.
Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, is this my? Can I use a Hail
You
Mary?
can use your Hail Mary.
Yeah.
Is it Case Keenum, Bailey Zappi, or Devlin Hodges?
Ooh, that was not any of who
You were eyeing up?
I was thinking like Colt Brennan from the old Hawaii days. I think he held it at one point.
He did have a lot of touchdown passes.
Okay, Bailey Zappi, Devlin Hodges,
or Case Keenum.
I'm gonna go. I don't think this is right, but I'm gonna go Case Keenum.
And the tiebreaker question:
whatever the hell it is.
What seed was that NCAA tournament winner in question number 2?
I believe they were an 8 seed.
Thank you, Ravi. Shall we go through the answers?
So what bone did Shane get thrown?
So Shane, I'll tell you at the end.
Okay.
I'll tell you at the end.
I didn't need it.
Well, he gave me a year, and I said, well, that was this.
No, you're fine.
Okay. All right.
All right, here we go. Question number 1. Who's won the most Silver Slugger awards in Major League Baseball history? Shane, you said Alex Rodriguez.
I said Barry
Ravi
Bonds.
said Barry Bonds. The answer is Barry Bonds.
Nice. There's one.
And that's totally on me.
Question number 2. Who's the lowest seed to win the NCAA tournament? You both said Villanova. You both are correct.
No big deal.
There he is.
Do I get bonus points for getting the year?
Well, so
No.
that's how. Let me give you the throw the bone thing now. When I went to the tiebreaker, Shane, I said it's between 1 to 16. Shane, like those are the seeds. And I said, he's like, can I get another hint? And I said, the team that won was 1985. And he goes, can I go back and change my?
Could I go? Well, that was Villanova.
And so I let him
So
go.
who
back.
did he say first?
I said Arkansas.
He said Arkansas. So I let him go back.
Nonsense.
And
I knew he won in '85.
I'm going to go all state of Florida and sue for collusion here.
And then I gave him a 50-50 on the last question.
No,
don't put that crap on me.
I gave Shane a lot of love,
a lot
today.
of help.
And question number 3: who holds the record for most passing touchdowns in college football FBS history?
Kenny.
You both said Case Keenum. You both are correct.
Okay.
So Case Keenum at Houston holds.
Yes.
I can't remember how many passing touchdowns it was, but career passing touchdowns.
So I win because I got.
You got all 3 right. Yeah. So you won before the tiebreaker. The tiebreaker question was, what seed was that team that won the NCAA tournament? Question number 2, which was Villanova in '85. Ravi, you said 8. Shane, you said 12. The answer is 8. Yeah. Ravi swept today for trivia.
And you thought my bet was ridiculous.
So I offered Shane. Shane goes, I said, Shane, how much? I said, let's put a wager on this. Yeah. He goes, so if I win, I get $50. I said, fine. If you win, I'll give you $50. But if you lose, you have to eat 2 jelly beans.
Ooh, and he said no?
He said no. I'm like, $50 against 2 jelly beans?
Yeah,
but I
won, didn't I?
No, you did not win.
Well, but he won by not choosing to take the bet, is what he's saying. Shane, that bet right there, though, I told him I'd do much more for $50.
Oh yeah,
I probably would eat 5.
I do like 5. I do 5
to 6 jelly beans.
Yeah, I do 5 jelly beans for $50.
Easy,
even if I had to swallow them.
2.
Yeah, absolutely.
I gave him 2. $50.
Come on, Shane.
That's like what?
No.
3 minutes of pain.
Nobody can do that.
3 minutes of pain.
I mean, he probably knew that he was up against the trivia god.
That's
over
a bunch
here
of BS.
and,
maybe so.
And couldn't get it done. Listen, I'm pretty impressed. I was pretty happy. I was a little concerned about the Barry Bonds one because there's a lot of guys that.
Well, A-Rod and Piazza are tied for second, and
say,
those were answer choices that I gave Shane.
So those were A-Rod was one I was worried about.
Can you tell me who's won the most Gold Gloves? This one surprised me, but then didn't surprise me whenever I was asked this at a trivia night.
Is it? So my initial thought was Brooks Robinson, which I don't think is correct. Is it Greg Maddux?
It is Greg Maddux.
Yeah.
Dude, that's a great call.
Thank you. Yeah.
Great call. It is Greg Maddux.
I think Brooks might be the most position player, but Greg Maddux has like 18 or something. He's crazy.
Yeah, Brooks Robinson has won 16. Pitcher Greg Maddux won 18.
I even got the number right.
That's pretty nuts, man.
Listen, that's what we do here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Trivia God.
Couple note real quick. Tomorrow and Friday, Elijah Herbal will be here with me instead of Andrew. He gets a couple days off. Been working hard.
Not really.
Well, from the radio.
Yeah, we'll be doing a lot of social media.
He's going to be working on a lot of content because a lot of emojis on Twitter for Nebraska these last couple days. We'll keep you posted. Check out all the Hurrdat Sports social media channels. We'll be back tomorrow, me and Elijah, here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.